I get those goosebumps every time you come around, yeah. You ease my mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those comments, I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time I need the Heimlich, throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. When you're not around, when you throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. 713 through the 281, yeah, I'm riding. Why they on me? I'm flying, sipping low key. I'm sipping low key and honest, flying rider. I get those goosebumps every time you come around, yeah. You ease my mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those comments, I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time I need the Heimlich, throw that to the side, yo. I get those goosebumps every time.
We're back. We are back. Welcome back to Loading Mag NUFC Away Day Special. Daz has done an absolute genius again. That intro is absolutely.
It's better than the old music in it. Let's be honest.
Yeah, 100%. It's a class.
Yeah,
it's a class intro. But welcome. We are back. Away days. We do not stop in a very, very busy week. And we have the midweek fixture away at Everton at Goodison Park. Look, it's another one where we can potentially go on a bit of a run again, Chris. What are your thoughts and feelings about the game going into it, fella?
I mean, off the back of that Tottenham game, like I am feeling confident, and I think most Newcastle fans would say they're feeling confident. I mean, when we were talking pre-Tottenham game, we were saying, weren't we, Pete, that like this could be the potential banana skin. Obviously, we've got Southampton at home at the weekends, which we'll all be at. Feeling majorly confident for that one, regardless of Thursday's result. But yeah, this has got the potential to be a banana skin because we know how much Everton need to win. We know how much it'll mean to them getting even a point. It all adds up, doesn't it? We were talking pre-show about being in a similar situation, and it's not a nice place to be. But yeah, I think the key thing for the match on Thursday is, well, firstly, who gets the first goal, and secondly, how soon. Like, say for example, Newcastle score first. It all depends how soon we get that first goal. We get a first goal in the first 15 minutes. If I was an Everton fan, I'd have serious concerns. The longer it stays 0-0, the more opportunity they've got to get something out the game. As we saw last season when Alex Iwobi robbed us of any points. And hopefully Mike will confirm that no one's going to try and strap themselves to a post this time. So fingers crossed. And hopefully they've got better clippers if they do.
Yeah, and then I have to borrow for the fans. Oh God, what a game that was last time! It having everything apart from a Newcastle goal and 3 points. But look, it's definitely bouncing into this game, in a with a good feeling, and you mentioned that, a good feeling. Some may say we're feeling a little bit juicy. Some may say we're feeling a little bit extra smooth juicy. Thanks to Mark for that one. So yeah, we are feeling good at the moment, and certainly Jacob Murphy is. That's for sure. But look, it's a huge game. We're going to get into it. This is our chance to really cement Champions League football. Yeah. It really is. These next 3 or 4 days ahead of us could be pivotal in this run-in, and we'll get into that in just a second. But firstly, welcome to everyone in the chat. So many in there already. Get your questions in. The super chat, super stickers are open. So get your questions in for myself, for Chris, and for Mike, who's coming on just very, very shortly. But first, massive thank you to the likes of Chris Bank. You got Tom Dixon, you got Daniel Much, Gary Milliken. Apologies, we're 6 minutes late. My bad. Had to restart the laptop. So Monkey Suit, great to see you back in the chat again. David Cook, as always, the main man. Daz Shocks is in the house with his fantastic intro. Top man, as always. Paul Gallant, welcome in. Jason Scott, Craig Lee, always in the house. And of course, our resident spanner, Lisa Mould, is in there too. And alongside many more that are coming in now, there always creeps in just at that point in Geordie 2 for Life also. We're going to get down to it. We've got a fantastic guest on who's coming back to join us again from the Unholy Trinity podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome back in Mike. So, Mike, how you doing, fella?
Not too bad, lads. Not too bad. Just put on there one of my final pins in my Anthony Gordon voodoo doll just for in preparation for Thursday night. But no, listen, all fun and games, as you know, on Merseyside at this moment in time. So looking forward to a hostile Goodison Park on Thursday, that's for sure.
I was going to say, do you think it's going to be like that again? I mean, in the back end of last season, when you're in a similar position, you really did crank it up at Goodison Park. You had the blue smoke, you had the greeting of the players coming in. You really kind of made an atmosphere of it. Do you think on Thursday they're going to try and drum that up again, albeit with a different type of manager?
100%. I mean, the police have just confirmed today, well, in the last half hour actually, that the players are going to be arriving by coach. Obviously, you probably saw the coach welcomes last season, the back end of last season especially. There's been a few this season. Since Sean Dyche has come in, the players arrived by car, believe it or not. And the talk was they weren't going to change that, despite conversations with one of our major fan groups, 1878. They were going to arrange something so we can welcome the players in the cars. But I don't think the players fancied fans smashing the cars as they were going through a big line of crowds of Evertonians trying to get to the car park. So they are going to be arriving by coach. So fully expect it to be lively from early on. Smoke bombs will be going off, flares, and I don't mean the ones that you wear. I know sometimes our fashion in Liverpool can be a little bit behind the times, but listen, no one's wearing flares around these parts. But it'll be lively. It'll be lively from early. I expect a good atmosphere. I expect the fans in nice and early as well. There's a call to get fans in as you know for the warm up around sort of 7:15 before the players head back in about 7:30ish. So yeah, it will be loud. It's got to be loud. You know, it's come down to ourselves once again. You know, we did it last season. Probably a bigger battle, I'd say, this season, given what fixtures we have left. So yeah, you know, I'm looking forward to it. It's mentally draining, of course. You know, after every weekend's over, you're sort of happy for the weekend to be gone, and then as the week carries on, you get closer to the next game, and it all kicks off again in your head. So it's going to be I think a tight game. I really do, you know. And we'll get into obviously Newcastle's form and what you've done and your latest fixture, especially at the weekend against Spurs. But it's not going to be a game, I don't think, with a lot of goals in, and that might surprise some people. But it's going to be tight for me.
No, it's equally. Everton don't really score many goals, and it was kind of proven at the weekend. You went to Selhurst Park against Palace, and it was a 0-0 draw. Didn't seem like there was too much action in the game, and you obviously came away from the point. But I have to say, I don't know, Chris, I don't know if you're aware. I was looking at the fixtures. They had it up on Sky not long before we came live, and obviously they play us on Thursday. If I'm right in thinking, you've got Leicester next, which is a massive game at Leicester. Huge. Then, if I'm right in thinking, you go to Brighton. Then you've got Man City at home, and then I'm not sure the last.
We've got Wolves away, and then we finish at home to Bournemouth.
That's it. Yeah. That's a tough set of fixtures. Newcastle aside, you've got the likes of Leicester away. Brighton away, Man City at home. Okay, they're three games where, you lose them and one or two other teams pick up points. You could be right in the mix, and it's then going down to ultimately the final two games of the season where you've got, you're away at Wolves. Wolves have turned a little bit of form recently. They picked up some good wins, and then Bournemouth at your place, which, to be fair, you watched Bournemouth recently. They go and beat Tottenham. at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and then get absolutely hammered by West Ham. You kind of don't know which team you're going to get from them. So, like, just from saying those fixtures, I'll come to you first, Mike. What are your thoughts in terms of those fixtures and your potential for staying in the league?
It's one of them. It's always a game at a time, isn't it? You know, the back end of the season, you do see some very strange results, and you know, anybody can beat anybody. I think a lot depends on where certain sides are. You know, if Leicester win tonight, for example, obviously playing Leeds, a game which impacts ourselves, that put Leicester 3 points above us with a better goal difference. I probably think Leeds are the ones who are in most danger. Obviously, besides ourselves, Forest and Southampton, and Leeds are the ones just a point above us for that we can really get onto. So, you know, if Leicester feel a bit more comfortable after a win tonight, then things look a little bit different on Monday. If they lose tonight, you know, again, it maybe works in our favour, but we've got to pick up the points ourselves on Thursday. So it's got to be a game by game. You know, we know Brighton are a very, very good side, of course they are. You know, what a side, what a team that's been built there over the last few seasons, and it showed in the FA Cup semi-final against United the other day how unlucky they were not to get through. Like you say, Wolves, a bit of form, difficult, but again, they're hit and miss. They're absolutely hit and miss. Man City will depend on what happens against Arsenal this week. If Arsenal happen to go to City tomorrow and beat them, and City can't win the league, then again, if they're going to play a sort of half a side, as good as they are, that can go in our favour. And then Bournemouth will be safe by the time we get to Goodison Park for me on the last day of the season. But it's going to go down to the last game of the season, in my opinion. And it's, you know, have we got the bottle? Have we got the backbone to, in the meantime, pick up points? Because I think you're looking at around about maybe 33, 34 could do it, in my opinion. I don't think it's going to be as high maybe as other seasons. I think that might do it, and that's why I include. I think Bournemouth are probably around about safe.
Yeah.
But Leeds, Leicester, us, Forest, Southampton are the ones that we obviously will be in the battle to stay in the Premier League. You'd probably argue Southampton are as close to us gone as out of everybody there. I mean, as good as they did against Arsenal last Friday, they still threw away a 2-goal lead twice. And, you know, for them mentally, that must have absolutely killed them, because if they pick up another 2 points, they're right in the mix, aren't they? But I think they're really struggling. But, you know, from Leeds down, it's anybody's. The problem we've got, I think someone mentioned there, obviously, we don't score goals. That's the biggest concern. Other sides down there score goals. Forest score goals, but they can't defend. Leicester have got goals. Leeds have got goals. And then Bournemouth have got goals. And we haven't. And that's why we've got to basically try and be resolute and be as tight as we can at the back and look to try and nick something from set piece situations, a counter attack, and that's why again on Thursday I just can't see there being many goals in the game.
Yeah, no, it's you're looking to, as a team at the moment, looking to make it difficult. That's for sure. Chris, I'll come to you. Obviously, from your perspective, and you're from around the way, so you must be hearing little snippets of things in the build up to the game from a Newcastle and an Everton perspective. What do you make of Mike's comments about, you know, first of all, their chances of staying up, having heard those fixtures, but equally the looking at Thursday, Mike, from his opinion, thinks that it might be a game where there's not a lot of goals in it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a possibility for it, and obviously, if you look at last season, that was exactly how it happened. And really, if you're talking about defensive-minded managers, Sean Dyche is probably right up there. Like, one thing Everton will be is organised, or I expect them to be anyway. I watched the Palace game, and sadly, they just looked lacking up front for me. You know, they've got players, you know, like Damari Gray and Dwight McNeil and players like that who 1 minute they can turn it on, and the next minute there's just no consistency there.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's, you know, been a problem for Everton for a while now. And then obviously it's keeping the likes of Calvert-Lewin injury free. They've thrown Ellis Sims in for a little bit. They've tried Neil Maupay, who obviously they bought from Brighton, but that hasn't really worked out. It's just, I don't know, with Everton, looking at the fixtures, Pete, that you put up before, and I've had many a discussion with various Blues and obviously other people, and like, for me, I think they can get out of it. It's not going to be easy, and it's going to be difficult, don't get me wrong, but they're very much still in it. Like there's some fixtures there, and I think you could pick up points, as Mike said before, about Bournemouth. We're saying Bournemouth are out of it, and that's off the back of 2 wins. And all of a sudden they go up to 33, and you look at the table and you go, actually, yeah, they look all right. We could be talking, about Everton or Leicester or Leeds picking up 2 wins on the bounce or 4 points, and all of a sudden you look at the table and you go, And as Mike said earlier, when Southampton were playing Arsenal, their league position looked pretty good, didn't it? Or right up until Arsenal equalised, and then all of a sudden back down again. It's very, very tight at the bottom. When I looked at all the fixtures, that the teams had left the other day, to me, I think Southampton, Forest, and one of Everton or Leicester are down, in my opinion. Obviously, there's a big match on tonight. Leeds are at home to Leicester. So that could play a big factor. That was on the assumption that I think Leeds could beat Leicester tonight. I'm assuming, Mike, tell me if I'm wrong. I'm assuming you probably want Leicester to win tonight, because when you compare the two squads, you would assume that Leicester have got enough within their squads to kind of get out of trouble. They've brought in Dean Smith and Craig Shakespeare, who used to be at the club as manager. So and obviously they've got John Terry as well. So they've got a management team who are more than capable of getting them out of the position. And then obviously, they've got the likes of Maddison, Tielemans, Vardy, Iheanacho, Daka. They've got players there who can, turn it on. Whereas I think when you look across the Leeds squad, I don't know whether they've got, the same amount of squad depth. So for me personally, if I was a Blue, I'd be wanting Leicester to win tonight. But is that how you feel, Mike, or are you just hoping for the draw?
No, I think you're right. I think most people will say, most Everton fans will say Leicester, ideally, just because Leicester, we think, have got that bit more quality. We're probably a bit surprised that they are down there. They didn't start the season particularly well. They didn't really buy, don't forget, because they were quite close with the profit and sustainability rules. Like, obviously, we seem to have breached them according to the Premier League. But Leicester apparently were close, hence why they had to get rid of certain players. And why they never really brought anyone besides is it Fass at the back, the centre half. They brought him in, and that was pretty much about it. So they didn't really strengthen. Leeds, again, they've got goals on the side, but defensively they've been shipping goals for absolute fun in recent weeks. So for me, I just think from a mentality perspective, if Leeds lose tonight, I just think that's really Gonna suck them right in. They're a point above us, a goal difference closest to us than Leicester are, off the top of my head. And I just think they're a little bit more fragile, especially at the back. And you probably trust Dean Smith to drag Leicester through with the quality that he's got, as opposed to Harry Gracia at Leeds, who has come in, hasn't hit the ground running particularly well. They've been absolutely stuffed in a couple of games as well, from obviously Crystal Palace going in and scoring 5, and then Liverpool going there and getting 6. Was it at the top of my head again? I can't remember. Don't watch Liverpool. So, it's one of them, isn't it? It's toss of a coin, really. But I think tonight's game at Leicester will go a long way to decide which one of those two sides pulls away. If Leeds do and get themselves onto 32 points with a win tonight, then they're going to feel very confident of coming away from it. But I just think it would be Leicester who get the win, at the very worst a draw, and then on to us then on Thursday night.
Is it at Leeds?
At Leeds, yeah.
That always gives them the edge sometimes. Well, I say sometimes against Palace, it definitely didn't. But you would assume at this point in the season it would give them the edge. Just like when we talked about last game of the season with the likes of Bournemouth coming to you at Goodison Park, it may well give you the edge in that game. But it's going to be really, really interesting. I'm intrigued to see. I have to give it a shout out. Massive thanks to, sorry, Chris, the donation from Jimmy. Thank you very much. He's put, to hell with Ticketmaster. Their ticketing system is worse than the one at SJP, St James's Park. And I think he's referring to the fact that he's been trying to get tickets for the game in Atlanta for the pre-season friendly, the series. I think he's finally got his ticket. So well done to you. I know it was a hard task at getting that done, but yeah, absolutely fair play to you. And top man for the donation as
Cheers,
well.
Jimmy.
We really appreciate it. Legend as always. Lots and lots of questions coming in, that is for sure. But look, we'll switch gears now to Newcastle, because look, we have to talk about the fantastic performance on Sunday. We wanted a reaction. We felt like we were going to get a reaction, Chris. We definitely got it. 5 of the best in 21 minutes. It was just electric football. Yeah,
it was. Like, I'll be honest, Pete, and we said this, didn't we, during the show? We've not seen 21 minutes of football like that. And I think across the whole season, watching Man City, watching the likes of Arsenal, like, I don't think anyone's hit those levels. And yes, Tottenham are a complete mess at the moment. I understand that, but they've still got a bloody good squad, haven't they? They've still put out a decent 11. So, like, for us to go out and do that in the manner that we did, in the way that we did, especially off the back of arguably, if not our worst performance of the season against Villa, to bounce back like that was absolutely brilliant. Big confidence boost going into this tough game at Goodison Park, and like, yeah, I genuinely, as a football fan, I don't remember seeing a Newcastle game like that ever. Like, as I say, those first 20, 21, 30, 35 minutes, if you carry on for the rest of that first half, were just brilliant. Like, it was just scenes in our house, which was great.
The way we did it, though, I don't think I've seen a Newcastle team do that. I think over the course of a game, you go back to the Sunderland game, you go back to the Tottenham game, when we got relegated under Rafa, those type of games there, like, we've done it before, but not as quickly and as efficiently as that. I asked you the question, Mike, does that worry you slightly, the way we played on Sunday? Does that have any influence on you in your thoughts about Everton going into Thursday, or is it something where you've not really kind of thought about it? Don't know if you heard that, Mike.
I didn't, mate. I'm so sorry I didn't. I was going to say, I was getting my head pecked from Mrs. upstairs about the dog. He'll be down in a minute. He'll be down. So what did you say? I'm sorry, mate.
No, we were just talking about the game, obviously the 6-1, but in particular those 5 goals scored in 21 minutes. And Chris was just saying, like, how we haven't seen Newcastle do that to a team as quickly and as efficiently as that. And the question sort of we had for you is that in the back of your mind, and does that worry you to an extent going into Thursday's game, or is it something you've not really thought about?
I think you can't ignore it. Of course you can't. I watch the game like everybody else, and every single time I seem to look up at the television, there seems to be a goal in those first 20 minutes. I mean, don't get me wrong, you'll all agree Spurs were horrific, and when you concede the first minutes or so, especially with Spurs, have got quite a sort of weak mentality, you find, and over the years you notice with certain sides, we're probably a prime example. We haven't got a particularly fantastic mentality, and but when you got that first goal, and obviously it went to 2, 3, 4, 5, some lovely goals in there, by the way. The one, the assist from Willock, was it outside of his right foot, fantastic ball. What a great ball. That's probably assist of the season, if they give an award out for that. Murphy's goal, that first goal, fantastic finish. So you can't ignore it. But I think you've got to, as a football club, as a playing staff, as a manager, they won't give it much thought. The game's gone. From your perspective, from your players' perspective, they're going to be absolutely sky high on Thursday, and coming to Goodison Park won't worry them, I'm sure. And it's up to us as fans to make them worry once they get there. It's that easy, but we can't let it bother us. We've got to make sure that we back our team. The players know we're right behind them, and it can't be in the front of their mind. Go out and play your game. That shouldn't alter how we set up on Thursday, in terms of obviously being difficult to beat and playing with a bit of pride, passion, intensity, energy. And showing us as Evertonians that the players want to get out of this state that they've got that they put themselves in, really.
Chris, I'm going to come back to you because obviously we were there last season, and you know, from our perspective, Mike will have a different perspective from an Everton point of view. But from our perspective, we felt we should have won the game. We felt we did enough, that we had enough of the ball, we had enough chances to win the game. We just didn't put the ball in the net. And it was almost, we kind of said at the time, almost felt like a bit of a sucker punch when Iwobi did score the winning goal. Do you think that'll be in the back of the players' minds going into that? Not as a worry, but as something to think about as motivation, either for the players or Eddie Howe?
Yeah, so when you first started answering me the question, you was thinking, is it going to be in the minds? I was just going to say no, like I don't think it will, but I get what you mean in terms of, you know, the motivation, because they'll probably feel last season like, you know, we could and we should have got 3 points. Like we were the better team, but equally, I think a draw, I could have coped with a draw, but the fact that we lost was just like, you know, I'd say it was probably 60-40 to us. You know, we should have won the game. We didn't, and then we got hit by the sucker punch at the end. But yeah, I think the players will, you know, Eddie. Well, I don't know whether Eddie Howe will mention or not, you know, about the fact of what happened last season. Who knows? But I do think that the players, I just think they're going to be that focused. It wouldn't surprise me if Eddie was like, right, you know, you all know we need what 4 or 5 wins to guarantee this. And they will see this as a very winnable game, especially off the back of that performance against Spurs. So I expect the lads to go in exceptionally confident into this game. Yeah, we can't just expect to turn up and take the 3 points, because it's not going to be like that. It's going to be a difficult game. You know, Everton, you would think, are going to be really pumped up for it, and they will probably look at their fixture list and think, you know what, home advantage. If we can get points from our home games, it gives us a fighting chance. So they'll probably looking at it and thinking, you know, Newcastle arguably aren't desperate for the points. So, you know, maybe, you know, we go in super confident and maybe take our foot off the gas a little bit, or, you know, underestimate Everton. So maybe that'll be the angle they're looking at. But I think it's going to be a difficult game for us, but I am going in confident, and I do think the players will be as well.
Yeah, I think there will be an element of confidence. We are a different team, and the one thing that we have is that we've got the Champions League as a potential there. It's there for us to take. And as we said right at the top of the show, I do genuinely believe that these next 2 games, Everton, and then we've got Southampton at home at the weekend, we get those 2 games against teams in the bottom half of the table, that could propel us up massively. We could be sitting on 65 points. We could be 5-6 points away at that stage Sunday night away from Champions League football. You look at the teams around us. You look at the maximums that they can get. They're all their maximums, apart from Brighton, are around 71 points. We've got a significantly better goal difference. We're in a position to really take us forward. So what I'm hoping and what I'm expecting really is a really confident Newcastle United team. Certainly not the team that we saw against Aston Villa. And I don't know if you agree with this, Chris, I almost feel like this team Thursday will want to go and prove that they can play well and play well away from home after the last time we played away from home. And I'm expecting them to put on a performance because of that, because of how poor it was.
Yeah, and do you know what, mate? That's fair. I hadn't really looked at it from an away perspective, because obviously, you know, at St James's Park we are a different animal, really, aren't we? And hopefully Eddie will want to kind of get the confidence back in the team away from St James's Park, because obviously all of our remaining games aren't at St James's Park, unfortunately. So they, you know, Eddie and the lads will probably see this as a good opportunity to kind of get back on that winning train away from home.
Yeah, definitely. I think Daz has put in the chat, happy birthday to Mike Gent. I'll just steal the chat 1 second off you, Chris.
Yeah, go for it, mate.
Mike, if you're in the chat and it's your birthday, happy birthday. I hope you've had a fantastic day and all is well. I know there's some other bits in the chat as well. But I want to come to you, Mike, because, you know, we've talked about certain players. We've talked about certain players in a little bit of detail. I want us to talk about another player, and you kind of briefly touched on him So we have to talk about him because he does link to both clubs, and it is Anthony Gordon. Look, there's a lot of talk around Anthony Gordon at the moment. With regards to his move to Newcastle, certain things of his reactions against Brentford. What have you made of his start at Newcastle, and is it what you expected since he signed?
Yeah. I mean, he was never going to come in and start week in, week out. Newcastle have got a lot of talented players in those wide positions. So for him, bear in mind, it wasn't long before the move that he wasn't getting a great deal of game time at Everton for whatever reason that was. But it certainly wasn't going to go in and uproot any kind of trees. I think early on, when I saw him coming on off the bench, you saw it, in little
sorry, just boss goal there at Leicester, 1-0 Leicester.
I'm behind.
It was a great finish, that.
Great finish. Done it time and again. Tillemans, Annie. Done it time and again.
Maybe
sorry. That's me. Sorry, boys. Sorry.
Maybe in black and white next season. Who knows?
Who knows?
Well, no, sorry, mate. No, in terms of Anthony Gordon, he's one of those players who has got a lot of developing to do. He came in, and I saw him in snippets come off the bench for yourselves, and he looked lively. He was carrying the ball, he was going past players. I think that his biggest issue is probably fitness and energy, which you probably see that yourself. When you start Anthony Gordon, he's not going to give you sort of 80, 90 minutes at that level that probably Eddie Howe expects. And you watch Newcastle nowadays, they're a nightmare in terms of the fact that, that high press. If you try and play from the back against Newcastle, I mean, we won't, by the way. We'll go long, no problem at all. But if you do, you're just going to come unstuck. So it's one of those where he's got a lot of developing to do. He certainly hasn't. Obviously, he's not scored. He was unlucky, I saw, against Spurs. Nearly got a goal against Spurs when he came on. But yeah, it's one of them. It was a difficult time, wasn't it? When he did move, it was a strange time. I think he let himself down. I've got to be honest. I think there's a way in which you leave a football club, and he didn't leave. That goal's been disallowed, by the way.
Yeah, I've just seen that, just disallowed. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, wait till you see that one back. So yeah, I mean, he left the club. You can leave a club with dignity and with respect. And we obviously, our most recent one is probably Richarlison before him, who left with the fans' wishes, and we understood it. And he had to go. It helped us financially. But Anthony Gordon, whether he wants to admit it or not, I did see the programme notes from the Spurs game. He went on strike. Let's just. He did. There's no denying it, and he can't deny it. Although he has, he went on strike, forced to move, and that was that. And that's just disrespectful, isn't it? At the end of the day, you probably would have got your move. You would have got your move anyway. But there's ways and means of going about it. So when you do that, when you come out in an interview a few weeks later and basically say that you think that you deserved a better send-off, come on now. He was a big part of things last season, don't get me wrong, and I've said this time and again, I think he had a lot on his shoulders. I think he put a lot of pressure on himself to get Everton out of the situation that we found ourselves in. At times that was to his detriment, because he just used to run around and just try and do it all, and at the end of the day he ran out of energy quite often, and that was to his detriment. But I think when you're such a young kid, 21, 22 years of age, you don't get the send off that you may think that you deserve if you don't carry yourself with the same kind of respect that we expect. So come Thursday, I'm pretty sure Eddie Howe will not start him. I'll be very surprised if we see Anthony Gordon doing any kind of warm up on the sideline, going past the family enclosure towards the Gladys Street as well, by the way. So I don't think we're going to see much of Anthony Gordon on Thursday night. And listen, if he does come on, if he does warm up, then he's going to have to expect quite a hostile reception. But the warm up itself, I'm sure, will be hostile. And listen, you reap what you sow, and we've got to use that to our advantage, of course. But the game is bigger than Anthony Gordon.
I'm just going to do the chat again, Chris, just 1 second.
Yeah, go for it, mate. Go for it.
Lisa actually asked that question. It's a question for Mike. Do you think Everton fans will act aggressively towards Gordon if he plays? And you've sort of touched on that. I mean,
I think if he plays any part, it'll be very hostile. I don't mean sort of, what we've seen at times. You go back to Graham Souness in Turkey, putting the flag in the middle of the pitch and things like that. It won't be like that, of course. Or
would it be like a bit like a Wayne Rooney? Because Wayne Rooney got a bit of a negative one.
He did, yeah, he did. Yeah, and obviously Rooney, when he scored, started kissing the United badge and all things like that. So he went even a step further. I'd probably expected Anthony Gordon to get his first goal for Newcastle, which, by the way, I'm sure is scripted somewhere in some kind of parallel universe for Thursday night. That he wouldn't quite do that, but if he comes on, it will not be nice. That is for sure. As I say, there won't be any kind of people entering the field of play, I hope. But it certainly won't be a nice experience for him. But I think Eddie Howe will probably be wise to protect him. Might even see a bit of a phantom injury appear before Thursday, to be honest.
I don't know. I think Eddie's going to put him in. And I don't mean to start, but I think he'll play some minutes at some point, just to almost get. I don't know. Do you agree with this, Chris? I'm going to say it. Like, I feel like he's going to play him at some point just to get that initial reaction out the way. When a player goes back. I don't know. What do you think?
I think there's more chance of him coming on if, say, we're winning comfortably. Like if it's 2-0 and we're in the last 5 minutes, I could see him coming on. But I know what you mean about in terms of just getting that duck out the way, getting it done and dusted. Go and take your abuse and then, kind of learn from it, I suppose. To wrap him in cotton wool and protect him and say, oh, it's okay, Anthony, don't worry, we'll save you till Southampton when you're at home at St James's Park. Maybe that wouldn't be, the right message to kind of send them. Maybe it would be, you're a man going there. You've made your decision. You've come here. We're happy you're here. Sometimes you are going to get abuse. This is probably the worst abuse you're ever going to get. Go and deal with it, and if you can get through that, you can get through anything. That could be his attitude, but I totally agree with you and Mike when you say he won't start. He'd definitely not start, because the last thing Eddie Howe wants to do is to make this about Anthony Gordon, and the last thing he wants is for Everton to have even more reason, to shout and scream and get behind the team. And if Anthony Gordon's in the starting 11, that's exactly what they're going to do.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely spot on. I think it's a really, really good point. And you're right. I think we need to make sure that we give them no reason to chant or cheer. I think you're right. I think if we're winning by a couple of goals and things are relatively comfortable, we'll bring them on towards the end, where the reaction might not mean anything. But yeah, I do agree. I think he'll come off the bench later on. But look, it's one to watch. I've said Mike right from the beginning when he signed. It might have been on with you when I said it, and I still maintain it. Is that Anthony Gordon's best football we'll see from next season. I always felt that this was a bedding in period for him at Newcastle to get used to going to a new club, new system, new way of playing. It was just to bed him in, and like you said, he hadn't really kicked a ball for you in the build up to him signing for us. So it was kind of like we needed to get him up to speed for that. So lots to come from Anthony Gordon, and if he can get a goal or two, an assist here or there from the bench before the end of the season, and contribute to us getting Champions League football potentially, fingers crossed. That will be sort of an almost a good job done for his first little stint at the club. But you know what? There's a few questions popping in the chat. Some brilliant questions. I don't know if you want to go to 2 or 3 of them, Chris, and have a look.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, I agree. There has been some good ones coming in. Just before I do, I noticed that Colin Nichols become a member. Colin, thank you very much, mate. Fully appreciated, and welcome to the Loaded Mag family. Right, where are we? This one came in just recently, and I've seen it and thought, that'd be a good question to ask Mike. Yeah, I mean, Mike, obviously this question is dependent on what happens between now and the end of the season. But Tom Dixon asks, maybe we can do this in 2 parts if you stay up, if worse comes to worse and you go down. Question for Mike: who do you think will leave Everton in the summer transfer window?
Everyone, if we go down. And everyone can stay up.
Everyone you want to, yeah, I know what you mean.
There's going to be a big list. So, best case scenario, we stay up. There's going to be a lot of players who won't be there next season. To name a few, Yerry Mina, definitely out of contract, will be gone. Sean Dyche doesn't like him for whatever reason. He's our best centre half. I can't work it out, but listen, there we go.
Sorry to interrupt, but Yerry Mina, he came with a big expectation from Barcelona. How would you, if he does leave, and you're saying he's likely to leave, how would you assess his time at Everton?
Well, it's not been good, has it? And I love him. In terms, when he's fit, he's our best centre half by a country mile. By the way, for me on the ball, he's a lot more comfortable. He's big, he's physical, he's strong, he's a wind-up merchant. All the traits that you need to be successful in the Premier League as a centre half, he's got them. The problem he's got is, and we had a former Everton physio, Danny Donaghy, head of medicine, on our podcast a few months ago. And he's very close to Yerry Mina. They're still very friendly now. And obviously, when he was going through a lot of his injury issues, Danny was still working there. And he said he's got one of those bodies where he's the strongest player at the club, comfortably, in terms of in the gym. He said because he's so explosive, it doesn't suit the Premier League. Basically, he's all very sort of fast switch and powerful. So when it comes to then trying to do it over the course of, say, 90 minutes at a time, he hasn't got the body for it effectively. And you see it with players sometimes when they come from abroad, and he's probably better in that warmer weather, the warmer climate, which he was used to in Spain, obviously South America, and he's come over to England, and that's not helped things either. So it's a massive disappointment this time at Everton, to be honest with you. He started, quite ropey, but then once he adjusted and acclimatized to Premier League football, fantastic. But he's had too many injuries. He breaks down time and again. I think every time he started the game this season, he's broken down at some point and gone off. So that's probably what Sean Dyche has got in his head. He's been on the bench for the last, I think, probably the majority of Sean Dyche's games. He's been fit, match fit to be on the bench, but he just thinks that I can't afford to start you instead of, say, Michael Keane or Connor Cody or James Tarkowski, because I know if I give you a game, the chances are you'll break down during the game in training that week, so therefore you can't form any kind of partnership.
So, sorry, I interrupted you there with the Yerry Mina talk. Who else do you think could potentially leave from that question?
So he's a definite. Wouldn't surprise. I mean, Connor Cody will go back to Wolves. He won't stay on. He hasn't been starting them since. Well, I think he played the first couple of games under Sean Dyche, and since then, the Arsenal game where we got battered away at the Emirates, Michael Keane came in, and since then he stayed in. So he'll go back. Tom Davies will be gone. I was a contract off the top of my head in the summer. He'll definitely be gone. Doesn't play many games. Wouldn't surprise me. Alex Iwobi, there's been talk of a new contract. Hasn't happened, understandably. The club probably don't want to get anything signed at the moment, as neither does the player. So again, he could be gone. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, maybe. Are there any kind of suitors for him? Because obviously he's not reliable. Now it remains to be seen, after playing 70 minutes against Chester behind closed doors last Tuesday and then 90 against Palace on Saturday, how fit he is going into Thursday. Now, Sean Dyche has been very, very patient with Dominic Calvert-Lewin and has made sure that he's come back. Other managers have rushed him back far too quickly, and we've seen what's happened. So he could be massively important in these 5 or 6 games, of course, but he could still be. He could still be gone.
1-0 Leeds.
I'm behind you.
Sorry, Mike, I keep ruining this for you. Don't I? Just give you a heads up.
Yeah, dear me. So it's. I think. I mean, there's more fringe players as well. You look at that squad, and you think there's a lot of players there who just don't cut the mustard. But you can't do it all. You can't do it all in one window. And as we found out, but Sean Dyche, I'm sure he'll be there regardless whether we stay up or go down. And it'll be up to him to decide. But there's a lot of players there who maybe we think should be on the pitch, who the manager doesn't like and aren't on the pitch. But the squad is a fairly weak squad. You look at you'll see tomorrow the bench. Tomorrow will not be particularly strong. We've got a few players hopefully coming back in. Sorry, Thursday got a few players coming back in Decore. from suspension. Onana should be fit with a bit of luck. So let's see what happens. But there's going to be a lot of outgoings, I think, regardless of what happens with us at the end of the season.
I just want to stick with really quickly. I apologise, Chris, with the Dominic Calvert-Lewin conversation, because you will know, because we talked about it, Mike, on the channel before. He has been linked with Newcastle. He is a player that it's been known to Newcastle fans that Eddie Howe is an admirer of. If he was to leave your club, what would be an acceptable bid? Because in the summer, and Chris will know, because we did the Full Load of Transfer show across the summer, it was rumoured to be sort of like 50, 60 million. Surely he can't be going for that sort of price with his injury record. So what would be a realistic price for him if he was to go in the summer?
Yeah.
Or not?
We can't ask too much. We really can't, because what kind of position are we in to start the bidding off, over £20 million? We're not. He's not played much football. He scored 1 goal all season against Crystal Palace in October. So it's just one of those where, go back sort of 2 years ago, and Arsenal were sniffing around him, and you were talking sort of £50 million. Whereas now you're probably talking, if you get 15 million quid, you probably take it, because if you've got a player who's playing potentially 8-10 games a season, you take £15 million because you can't rely. It all depends, as I say, as Sean Dyche, as he cracked the case with Dominic Calvert-Lewin in terms of his fitness, that remains to be seen. He's very, very careful, as I say, with players. He was with James Garner. He made him play countless games of the under 21s. Nathan Patterson, exactly the same. So when players come back from injury, it's not a case of just because you're Dominic Calvert-Lewin, you're back in the starting 11, or you're back on the bench because you're sort of 85, 90% fit. You've got to be as close to 100% fit as possible. Otherwise, he won't even look at you. So I think they've put a lot of work into Calvert-Lewin, which maybe other managers have not done, because they've been so eager to get him back, which takes us obviously back to the position we find ourselves in, and not strengthening in that particular area particularly well over recent years, which is why we probably find ourselves where we do at this moment in time.
Interesting. There's a lot of people in the chat when the Dominic Calvert-Lewin conversation came about. There was just, I think Daz started off, he just said no. Lots of people have said no, don't want him. I think they're obviously with that mindset of his injury record. And to be honest, I said no in the summer for the same reason.
Can I just ask a counter question based on what Mike's just said? If Calvert-Lewin's going for 15 million, do you take him on the proviso? Because like when we've been linked to in the past, I know we've both been quite vocal saying, not for us, certainly not for 50, 60 million. If it's 15 million, does that change the conversation?
Why are you asking me this question, Chris?
I'm just asking because that sounds like a very reasonable price. And I'm thinking, if you've got a fully fit Calvert-Lewin, and without being disrespectful, is there a potential for him to be playing a lot of games at Newcastle if he was to join? Do you know what I mean? Like, he's not someone who we'd rely on week in, week out. We know that.
It's something you'd look at, but for me, I'm
not saying I want him, but for 15 million. Like 15 million doesn't get you. How much did you pay for Morpay, Mike? He was 15 million, wasn't he?
I don't even go there, mate. I tell you what. What we paid for him is absolutely incredible. I think he was 13. I think
was it 13? Yeah.
And that's the best bit of business Brighton have ever done. And they're masters at getting good money. But tell you what, that fella just. I think I'm a better striker. I think I've scored more than 1 goal this season.
Yeah. He looks like he's lost it. Something clearly went wrong at Brighton, which is why they wanted him at the club. Something that's not right. But yeah, you guys definitely need to move him on. I don't know. I don't know. But I'd maybe consider it because he's 25. He's got a few years ahead of him. Third choice ahead of Wilson and alongside Wilson and Isak. European football, another option, maybe. Or would you rather have a young striker that you bed in and build? That's true. Lewis Miley, for example, scoring goals, playing really, really well. I think he's just just turned 18. You know, do you give someone like him an opportunity? That's no disrespect to Cabot Lewin as such, but I'm just thinking, in my mind, I'm thinking about what Newcastle would do, what Eddie Howe would do, what their blueprint is. But at the same time, Eddie Howe's a big fan. If that came available at that sort of price,
at that price,
do I think Eddie Howe would do that deal? I probably think he would. I do think he would do that deal personally if he became available at 15 million. But no, it's a good question. Really good question. And look, he may well not go anywhere, and he may well stay fit. Everton stay up, and he has a really good season for Everton next season. It looks like Dash is doing some bits with him. Another question before we move on to the next section.
Yeah,
Chris,
do you know what we've got so many good questions for Mike, so I'm going to try and whiz through them. This one I'm really interested to hear the answer on. I don't know whether Mike will be having this or not, but Geordie Tune for Life says, question for Mike, what do you think of Onana allegedly saying he likes the Newcastle project, and where has this come from?
Exactly, where has this come from? I think he was that Tia making things up. Do you know what I mean? That's the first I've heard of it. So I think someone's selling porkies there, to be quite honest.
I did see that article. I did see it, but I follow Newcastle.
Listen,
so obviously,
I think he's a player. We know if even Everton stay in the Premier League, he's a player that Everton may look to cash in on. I've got to be honest, just because of the fact they know, even based on the first season, the age, 21 years of age, he's inconsistent. And he is, but he's got all the attributes to be a very, very successful Premier League footballer, and he will go on and play for a top club in terms of a club who qualifies for Champions League year in, year out, who's fighting for league titles, who's fighting on all fronts in terms of Europe and domestically. So he'll go on and do big things. Onana, whether Newcastle is the place, I don't think so. That's no disrespect. I think what he'll be looking to do will be looking to go to a club who are there, who are fighting for these titles, and if that's in the summer, don't be surprised if it's the likes of your Arsenals, who obviously this season have proven a lot of people wrong, who've obviously are well in there with a great shout to win the Premier League. Real Madrid, going over there, that would suit him. That age as well. A lot of talent over there, but when you've got to, like to say, Luka Modric at the age that he is, you could quite easily go over there with Carlo Ancelotti and slot into that midfield with the likes of Camavinga and players like that. So he'll go on and do big things, and it might be this summer that we do lose him, but we'll make a good profit on him. But I don't think it'll be to Newcastle. I think he might have said that on the 1st of April, if he has said it, which obviously is April Fool's Day, and he's brought you all along for the ride, hasn't he? So,
I mean, do you know what, Mike? Going very quickly in response to that, back very quickly to that. The good thing, I suppose, with Onana is, as you said, he's had a pretty good first season, hasn't he? And I think you paid around 35 million for him. So any money that if you were to sell him tomorrow, you're going to want at least 50 to even start talking, aren't you? So he's a saleable asset.
He is, and the money can be made quickly, and there are a lot of suitors. I know Chelsea and Arsenal were both sniffing around in January. So a move is not out of the question, and it's easy money to be made as well. Yeah.
I've two very, very quick questions before we move on. Tom Dixon says, we know what you think of Gordon leaving for Newcastle, so we know that, but me and Pete have deliberated this ourselves on separate shows. In your opinion, what is his best position? I mean, for me, when he first signed, I thought that he was going to predominantly play on the left wing, but then Pete came up with some stats, and it showed his positional play for Everton, and it showed that he played a fair bit on the right. But do you think he's better as number 10? Do you think maybe a false 9? I don't know. What would you say his best position is going forward for Newcastle?
Yeah, I mean, he played a little bit centrally at times, but that was more at the start of this season when we had no strikers. So between him, Dwight McNeil, and Damari Gray, he sort of all floated between the sort of those three positions in terms of central, left and right. But, I'd probably say left wing just for the fact that he can cut inside on that right foot. Obviously, he's decent at carrying the ball, especially coming off the bench. When other players are tiring and he comes on, I think he clocked up. He was the second quickest player in the Premier League at one point this season.
Yeah, he was.
So you might not have seen that pace just yet, but he has got pace surprise. He's got that burst, really, that acceleration. I mean,
we saw that on Sunday, Mike. We saw that on Sunday. You know, we had his chance when him and what? It was really, really pleasing to see, because on that left-hand side, Willock bombing with the ball at his feet. Who's really, really Willock is deceptively quick with the ball.
He travels quick with the ball, doesn't he?
It's not easy to do. It's harder to do than just sprint direct. It's harder to run with the ball at your feet, and for some reason, Willock just seems to be able to do it effortlessly. And Willock was sprinting with the ball at his feet.
He couldn't catch him because sorry, Gordon flew past him, didn't he? Yeah.
Like, but those two running down that left hand side, I can't remember who the defender was for Tottenham, but they must have been absolutely shitting themselves. And he played the ball in. Gordon was unlucky, but I kind of think, to answer your point, Mike, we kind of have seen that pace, not as often, but we certainly saw that on Sunday.
I think it's deceptive with him. I think he was asked the start of the season about who's the fastest player at Everton, and everyone thinks, Ben Godfrey, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, those two, and he said, it's me. It's definitely me. And I was like, what are you on about? Because we knew he had a bit of pace, but you don't think of him as being particularly athletic and quick. But as I say, the stats tend to back it up. It's whether you can just do it consistently. You see the likes of, say, Almiron and St. Maximin, who are quick from the outside looking in. I know the quick players, and I always say to you every time I come on about St. Maximin, about his pace, and Everton always struggle with pace. He always concerns me. Almiron concerns me. Willock, like you say, got that pace, concerns me, because Everton are just so slow in all positions, really. So that's always the biggest factor. Speed kills, and that's the way the Premier League has gone. And the faster the player, the more concerned I am. But Anthony Gordon is definitely up there, and the fitter that he gets, I suppose, the more game time that he gets, the more that you'll see it.
130 in the chat. Thank you for joining us, Loaded Mag NUFC. If you haven't yet, click the subscribe button, click that subscribe, come and join the channel. But click that like, that thumbs up. We've got 51, 52 at the moment, but we've got 130 plus in the chat. Just everyone that hasn't yet clicked that like, just click that like. Only takes a second, but it means a lot to the channel. And look, we've had another 40 plus subscribers over the last few days, which has been fantastic. Thank you to all those new subscribers that are joining. So anyone in the chat that's watching, or anyone that's not in the chat that's watching, click the subscribe button. And something we don't say normally, click that notification bell. Because we've got a hell of a lot of shows coming up, and that notification bell will just give you that little signal that there's a show coming and about to start, just in case you forget, and then bang, you can come and join the show. So click that notification bell alongside the like and the subscribe, and of course all of us at Loaded Mag NUFC are massively thankful for all of your support. Let's get into the game and talk about the game a little bit more as we build to Thursday night. And look, there's no better way of starting to talk about the game than looking at some stats.
Evening, lads.
Like magic he appears. Welcome, Double O Stato, Splinter, Jaws, whatever you want to call you. Dr. Doom is in the house. Keith, great to have you on the channel as always, and on away days. How are things for you? And look, what stats have you got for us this week?
Oh, good, thanks. I'm looking forward to the Chris Hall derby, down at Everton on Thursday night. I'm sure your house will be a happy household when that game's on, Chris.
Well, I don't know about that, mate. But
yeah, are you going to the match, Chris, on Thursday?
I am. Yeah, I am. I'm in the away end. Going with a couple of others who are in the home end. But no, I'm in the away end. So yeah, can't wait.
I'll be putting your face on the gates, by the way, in the away end, and tell them to stop and search. Don't let them in. He's from around this area.
I normally get searched as well. Every time I've been to away grounds, for some reason, I always get stopped. I must have one of them faces.
That's it, mate. That's it.
No, it's because you're about to walk into the wedding and then they hear your voice and they go,
Yeah, the Scousman, like, what's he doing
Yeah,
here?
especially at Anfield at Goodison, you always get extra checks at Anfield at Goodison.
Mate, it's always funny whenever I'm at Anfield or Goodison because, like, obviously, you get in the throes of the game, you're screaming and shouting, and then you just see people sat next to me just like, wow, why is he here? Why is he getting so animated? You know what I mean?
brilliant stuff. What have we got for us? What have we got for us then?
Yep, got a load of stats here, some head-to-head stats. Got some managerial player stats as well and some general stats. Newcastle's all-time record against Everton, played 182, slightly better advantage to Everton here, although not by much. Won 71 games Newcastle, drawn 36 and lost 75. Premier League record is identical. 22 wins to Everton, 22 wins to Newcastle, 11 draws from 55 games so far, so it's that tight. The record at Goodison Park in the Premier League is played 27, 6 wins, 7 draws, and 14 defeats. Scoring 28 goals and conceding 42 goals. Everton and Newcastle as well have got the same number of goals scored against each other as well in the fixture. In the Premier League, 75 goals each. Everton have got a slightly better defensive record than Newcastle in this fixture. In the Premier League, 16 clean sheets to 12 for Newcastle. Although Newcastle have won 4 of the last 5 games in the Premier League against Everton, whilst the Toffees have won just 2 of their last 9 against Newcastle, 2 wins, 2 draws, and 5 defeats. Although he has a one for you to level it up, Newcastle have never won a Premier League match at Goodison Park on a weekday evening. Played 9, won 0, drawn 3, and lost 6 during the week against Everton at Goodison.
Stop crying it in, will you, bloody hell? Stop crying it in. Give us a chance, will you?
That's Richie's favourite saying that. He's always saying we're crying things in.
I've always got to put a bit of balance on the stats here. Managers, moving on to the managers here. Eddie Howe's managerial record against Everton again, heavily weighted to his Bournemouth days. 14 games managed, 6 wins, 2 draws, 6 defeats. So he's averaging over a point there. Sean Dyche, his managerial record in games against Newcastle, he's managed 12 games. He's won 3, drawn 4, and lost 5. So again, just slightly over a point a game average. Goalkeepers, Nick Pope, he's got 13 clean sheets this season for Newcastle, whilst Jordan Pickford, he's got 7 clean sheets for Everton this season. We've touched a little bit on Dominic Calvert-Lewin there just before. I'm going to focus on for players here for Everton. He's scored more league goals than against Newcastle than any other side in the Premier League. He's got 5 goals in 7 games. He's got a really good record against Newcastle. Callum Wilson also has a really good record against Everton in matches. 6 goals in 9 games. And remember, in the COVID season, at Goodison on a Saturday afternoon, he got 2 goals. He got the winners against Everton there in 2021. Damari Gray, 6 goals in 31 games, and Dwight McNeil, 31 goals in 33 goals, in 31 games. They're Everton's top goal scorers this season. Alex Iwobi, the player who got the winner last year in the corresponding fixture at Goodison, he has the most goal scoring assists for Everton this season with 7 goal scoring assists. Rounding off with some general stats here. And coming into this game, Everton have picked up 3 points from the last 5 games, both home and away. So that's an average of about a point or just under a point a game on average. And Everton have scored 4 times in the last 5 games. Everton have failed to score in 13 of their 32 Premier League games this season. So that's about 41% I know there's been a lot of 0-0. There's been a few 0-0 draws, and they failed to score in 4 of their 16 home matches this season in the Premier League. Newcastle have conceded in each of their last 6 Premier League games away from home. The last clean sheet away from home was against Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park in January, and the Saturday evening kickoff. And I thought I'd pull this stat out here, or a fact out for you as well. The last time that Newcastle beat Spurs by 6 or more goals in the Premier League, which was back in 96-97 season, they drew their first away game after this, and that was against Aston Villa 2-2 in January 1997. So just rounding off with a fact there. And that rounds off the stats and fact at the end.
Some great stats as always, Keith. Some good ones, but also some ones that I think 1 or 2 in the chat were not best pleased to hear that we weren't currently aware of. But what we also found was it was in some areas we are evenly matched. And looking at some of the stats for you, Mike, there was a number there that have backed up your actual mindset that you think it's going to be a really tight game, because it's, you know, there's some stats there for you this season that says that there's been games where you have drawn 0-0 or you've not conceded a goal, you've taken a clean sheet. So that kind of backs up what you were saying from that perspective. So really interesting. And it kind of throws question marks again when thinking of how this game is going to go. But always great to hear your stats, Keith. Always balanced, and you know, you always see both sides of the perspective of both clubs, so we always really massively appreciate it. Just wanted to move on to the tactics board because we are in a position where we can start looking at the game in a little bit more detail now. Just really quickly, Mike, is that I'll put Tarky in there as Tarkowski. Does that look about right?
Yeah, I'd say. I mean, what you'll probably find is though the core will be higher up than that, and you'll have McNeil, and I will be playing a bit further back. So the core tends to get quite close to the centre forward. So if you say play out from the back, he's the one who will press with Calvert-Lewin on the day of the game. So he's out of the 3 midfielders. He is the one who will be highest up, and as I say, probably more advanced at times than the two wide players. There's a lot of defensive duties for both Iwobi and Dwight McNeil to basically factor into their game.
So maybe more so like
a little bit further back. The core probably a little bit higher because it's not a 4-4-2. It's a very unconventional 4-4-2. But I think someone mentioned early on about ours the 4-4-2 being going. So in the absence of the core, you know, we have tried a bit of 4-4-2, and Everton can't play with 2 midfield. So the core is just full of energy. So what he'll do is he will press, but he'll drop back in as well. So he's in this little spot here. Yeah. Though defensively, he'll be right back in there, and obviously doing whatever he can to try and rush the Newcastle players on the ball, because Everton will give up possession. There's no doubt about it. Everton won't try and go toe to toe and try and keep the ball. We'll look at, as I say, looking to try and win the first ball, long ball up. Dom obviously much better in the air than either Mari Grays and Neil Mopey. Look to knock it down to the Corres and the 2 wider players, bring them into play, and then look to try and basically pick up free kicks, corners, throw-ins in and around the box and get some of the bigger players forward to cause a little bit of damage. But as I say, I fully expect us to go back to how we played against Arsenal in Sean Dyche's first match, where, you know, a quality in-form Arsenal side turned up at Goodison Park, and he would have foresaw Everton winning the game by 1-0. Similar with Brentford, although we were slightly more open against Brentford and maybe should have scored more than one. So Everton know what the limitations are, but hopefully the signs are that Onana will be back. The Manchester press conference isn't until tomorrow, but the signs are that he will be. Obviously, Decore definitely is back. Coleman is a question mark over. He's not been mentioned today from what I've seen from various people. So we'll see. If Seamus Coleman is not fit, then the likelihood is either Nathan Patterson or Ben Godfrey more likely will go to right back, and Mikalenko will stay at left back.
Okay. So I just wanted to ask you, just before I get Chris and Keith's opinion from a Newcastle perspective, just two things. One, firstly, are you you talked about that long ball and going long. I know whenever I watch Everton, I see that big, long Pickford ball. Do you tend to play across the back at all and play out from the back, or is it just literally long ball type play football? And secondly, where do you think you'll get the better of Newcastle, and where do you think you can potentially win the game?
We don't play from the back particularly often. Sean Dyche doesn't like it really. He'd rather trust Jordan Pickford to pick somebody out further up the pitch. The players at the back aren't particularly comfortable with the ball at the feet, and like I said earlier on, Newcastle just press. They'll put the high press on, and what will happen if Pickford goes short of Keane or Tarkowski or Coleman, then the likelihood is it'll come back to Pickford anyway, and he'll end up going long. So it's almost, well, why waste sort of 15 seconds doing that? Let's get the ball forward. So I think where we can win the game is being physical, matching Newcastle for effort and energy. That's probably Newcastle's best trait. What I've seen, and the best improvements probably that Eddie Howe's made is what he expects. And Newcastle players seem to be right on it. You go back to when Liverpool were using inhalers for 3 years, how energetic their players were. Maybe Newcastle have had that shipment arrive at the training ground. Since Newcastle are off, Liverpool are off their cycle this season. But the thing is, all jokes aside, Newcastle have got play with an energy. They play to basically make it difficult for the opposing side to feel comfortable. And Everton know, as I say, we can't be passing that up from the back and doing things like that. So we've got to match Newcastle for effort. We've got to be horrible. We've got to stand on toes. We've got to pull shirts. We've got to pinch. We've got to get under Newcastle players' skin. It's that easy because the gulf between the two sides is there. There's no hiding it. We are where we are for a reason, and the table doesn't lie, especially at this time of the season. So that's where we come in as fans. That's where our protesters with the cable ties come in. They'll be in the wings. Don't you worry about that. We've all got these just stop oil shirts, and like you say, the bolt cutters are being sharpened, ready. So we'll do what we can. Listen, there'll be all sorts of little tactics going on, I'm sure, from within the stands, from on the pitch. But the most important thing from a fan perspective is that we do see the effort. We do see the players putting the shift in. And we see that the players actually care, because the way things stand at the moment, we're currently going down. So there's no better time to show us that you can pull yourselves clear, and you've got to put a performance in after the last sort of three or four games. You've got to show us that you've got something and that you're willing to fight for the shares and for the club.
Interesting, really interesting. Chris, I want to get your thoughts on that from a Newcastle perspective. I put the team out there that I think will potentially start at Goodison Park. The only one I've got a question mark on is this man here, Fabian Schär, because we know he went off. We don't know whether he pulled his arse cheek, whether it was a hamstring injury. We're not quite sure. I think Eddie, obviously we've got Eddie Howe's press conference tomorrow, but even that won't necessarily give us the answers that we want, because we know how he does keep his cards very close to his chest. So there could be a potential there for Jamal Lascelles to come in. And there's a bit of you in the chat that have said, we're not necessarily against Lascelles coming in against Everton in this sort of game, especially if we're going to get this from Jordan Pickford, this long ball up here to Dominic Calvert-Lewin to try and get the knockdowns. I watched a few clips of the Palace game, and there was a number of knockdowns that he was winning, balls up into the air, big and physical in the air. He is good in the air. At St James's Park earlier on in the season, I thought Botman handled him really, really well. It was a good battle between them. I think there was one or two that Dominic Calvert-Lewin won, but Botman won quite a number of them as well. and maybe that extra firepower in the air from an area point of view from Jamal Lascelles, if they are to go long, as Mike as assumed that they will do, that might be a good move. So just your thoughts in general on the starting lineup. Would you change anything? And then the thoughts from yourself from the point of view of Lascelles maybe starting.
Yeah, so for me, Pete, I wouldn't change the lineup. What you've alluded to there about Lascelles, that could actually be good timing, because when you mentioned about Lascelles possibly coming in for Shaw, I totally agree. Like Lascelles, you could argue Lascelles' biggest strength is probably in the air, not just in our box, but also in the opposition box, which we haven't seen all that much of this season. So maybe if Lascelles is starting, it might be worth having a few quid on him to score a goal, because it wouldn't surprise me at all. Yeah, in terms of lineup, I wouldn't change anything else. If we're forced into a change in that back four, then so be it. But certainly, I wouldn't be moving Willikinho, as you fondly call him there, and Bruno and Sean Longstaff. Like they've got to retain the positions. I mean, the fact that Longstaff came in, he obviously missed the previous game against Villa, and he came in last week and he was brilliant. So yeah, Longstaff for me, and then Big Joe, absolutely fantastic out on the left. We know what we're getting defensively from him as well, which, looking at Everton's right hand side, may not be too much of a concern, as we've experienced in previous weeks. Mike, you'll know, with us having Big Dan Burn at left back, whenever he's coming up against the likes of Anthony or Saka or players like that, little bit worried. I feel less worried because it's Alex Iwobi. I had to stop myself, by the way, because my lad, he constantly sings Alex Iwobi, and when you mentioned his name before, I nearly started singing it, and then I thought, yeah, thank God I didn't do that. But yeah, I mean, I hope, Pete. I mean, we spoke. I think it was late last week, and we were saying that maybe save Wilson for this game. But I do hope Isak retains his place, and I think it would be harsh to drop him. Although Callum Wilson will be chomping at the bit, so that would be the only other change for me that you could see. In that maybe we give Callum Wilson, let Callum Wilson off the leash and just let him attack. That Everton defence. Who knows? Might want to rest Isak for Sunday. Not sure.
It's not a bad chat. I mean, we didn't do too bad when we did it last time, did we? Like you mentioned, West Ham. We ended up getting a couple of goals off the back of that, and we beat them 5-1. So could well be a good shout. Keith, I'll come to you. Looking at the team, we've talked about Jamal Lascelles coming in. Want to get your thoughts on that, but equally, what Chris has just said about the choice between Wilson and Isak, what you'd go for there. But I'm going to throw another one in, and look, he scored a couple of really good goals at the weekend, Murphy. But could this potentially be the game that Almiron starts? Would you start with Almiron, or would you go with Murphy again? So 3 talking points there: Lascelles, Isak, and Wilson, Murphy, and Almiron. What would you go for?
Yeah, I'm inclined to go with what you've got on there on the team sheet. To be honest, on the board there, I think. I'm pretty sure I've seen little bits and pieces saying it could be hamstring, and if that's the case, and if there is the doubt, then I think it'll be Lascelles that starts. Lascelles did figure on Sunday, didn't he, in the match against Spurs? And Eddie Howe generally goes with sort of pattern, doesn't he? He doesn't generally change it up. So if Shaw isn't starting, then I would expect Lascelles to be in. I would like to see the likes of maybe Target brought in and shape, but Howie doesn't generally tend to change things, so I would say Lascelles. Next talking point, I think I would go with Murphy. Keep Murphy in and keep bringing like Almiron as an option in the second half. I think I've said it before on the show, on previous shows, that Murphy has to be up there with the most improved player, certainly this season. Really, he's had a phenomenal season, really, in terms of his contribution. I've spoken as well about, games that he's figured and how well Newcastle have done in terms of getting results. When he figures, Newcastle do well, and they generally get the results. So I would keep Murphy in there, bring Alma on as a sub, maybe early in the second half if you need, if you need that extra goal or creativity moving forward. And the last talking point, yeah, definitely. Isak and Wilson. I like seeing them when they're on the pitch together. I know I've had a sort of like a lot of fans were sort of getting used to not seeing them start together, but it's nice seeing them certainly in the second half. If you like a couple of goals up, it's nice seeing them play together, really, because certainly like Wilson set Isak up for that goal against Fulham when we need that goal in extra time in January. So they do play well together, although albeit they're very different, aren't they, in terms of the styles. They can complement each other as well. So certainly about 60 minutes in, keep them both on the pitch. If you're going to make an attacking substitution, bring Wilson on at this stage. I think obviously Wilson's been trying to get that form back, hasn't he? And he's grabbed a few goals recently. Maybe not just start him yet. You can't justify it yet because Isak's been in tremendous form himself. But bring Wilson on in the second half. It's another game, and it's like another game under his belt where he's getting his form back. Maybe he gets another goal, one or two goal later on as well.
No, I think you made some really, really good points there. I think there's some really good points overall, and there's a lot. The one thing I would say, and from your points of view, both Chris and Keith, is that we have options. We've got options off the bench. I just added Gordon to that mix there. You look at the bench there, and you've got Target for Burn. You've got Gordon for either side of Joelinton, Murphy, Anderson that we haven't even talked about. ASM, the big question mark, is he going to be back? He's back in England. If you look at his Instagram yesterday, he's back in England and he's back training at the Newcastle training base. So is he now fit to be available in the squad? We'll wait and see. Almiron and then Wilson. So we've got options off the bench that if things aren't going right with this team, we can make those changes. But go on, sorry.
Back to the points earlier, Peter. One thing I didn't add, but I know you discussed it earlier about Gordon. I wouldn't feature him in this game.
At all?
Not yet. Sort of like I wouldn't. Maybe later on, but I just think you don't want it to be almost the focal point at the beginning of the game. Really, you want to take that heat out of the crowd because it is going to be a raucous atmosphere at Goodison, which it always is, especially on an evening game. You want to be a couple of goals up, game gone, and then bring them on at that point. Really, I just think if it was at St. James's, might be different. Obviously, home crowd and everything, but I just think obviously with what's went on and with how he departed at Goodison, it's going to be a raucous atmosphere in any way. Just take the sting out of it, but bring him on late on in the match if need be when you're a couple of goals up.
Yeah. No, that's a fair point. Definitely, and I think it'll be something that we will consider. Just looking at the team, the midfield's going to be an interesting battle. Longstaff, Bruno, Willock against Adrissa Gay, Onana, and Decore. From what Mike said, you said those guys are going to work their socks off, so it's going to be interesting to see how that battle commences. I'm really interested to see Keane against Tarkowski. I don't know what your opinions on this, Mike, but I've never seen Keane or Tarkowski to have blistering pace. This guy has blistering pace, and I think that could potentially be the difference in and behind. I don't know whether you play a high line or whether you play a low block line as a defensive four. I'm not quite sure about that, but I do believe that pace could be the difference in that back line. Joelinton's not slow. Seamus Coleman's obviously slowing down. He's an intelligent, experienced player, but slowing down in terms of his pace. He is a little bit older now. Joelinton with his pace and power running at Coleman in these tight positions. I'd be interested to see how that goes on. Mikalenko, I'm not sure from his perspective. I think he's got a little bit of pace about him. It'd be interesting to see how he gets on with Murphy. But this bit here against these two, this is what I'm interested in seeing. Physicality-wise, I think they've got it. Any balls in the air, I think they'll dominate. But anything in and around the ground, in and behind, I think it could be an interesting conversation there. But equally, the battle here with Dominic Calvert-Lewin, with Lascelles Botman or Lascelles Shaw, whichever one it is, and looking at, can we stop Iwobi being effective? Can we stop McNeil getting these balls into the box? Lots of different talking points, I do believe, with regards to this. It'll be an interesting one, that's for sure. So let's see how it works out. There are always talking points for both teams, but I just want to throw up thank you for Super Chat. Lascelles is the only defender to score from set pieces. John Elliott, thank you for your £2, but you're absolutely right. And to be fair, Chris, Keith, both mentioned about Lascelles from a set piece perspective. You're absolutely right, and that could be actually working in our favour going into the game if Lascelles does play. So really, really good point there. Anyone else for the super chat wants to come in, get your questions in like John did, and we'll make sure that we prioritise and get them out there to you. That's for sure. Any other questions? I know there is a few. Chris, you want to throw a few at Mike before we get to predictions?
Yeah. So I'm going to throw one of my own in really, really quick. Mike, how much is Ben Godfrey?
How much is he? Why do you want him?
I wouldn't mind Ben Godfrey. I've been like singing his praises over the last couple of, well, I wouldn't say the last couple of years, but maybe the last 12 to 18 months, because I just see a young lad. You were talking about having I forget which player you were talking about, Onana, and you were saying like he's got all the tools, all the skills, and I always feel sorry for Ben Godfrey because, Mike, you'll be able to tell me if I'm wrong here, but I always see him getting played out of position, and I just think he's never put in centre back, and I just think to myself, you signed him from Norwich, promising player. And whenever I seem to see him play, he's either a makeshift left back or occasionally right back. I know it's been very rare because now you've got Patterson, obviously, and you've got Coleman. But I just feel like he's got the tools, and whenever I see him, he's quick, he's strong. He seems quite vocal on the pitch as well. It's a bit of a leader. I don't know whether I'm wrong in suggesting that. But I don't know. I just think he looks promising, and I know he came with a good reputation from Norwich when you signed him. Yeah,
it's gone a bit wrong for him since he got COVID, and he got COVID badly. He suffered terribly with COVID back in 2020, and he spent a lot of time out. It took him a long time to get back, and he lost a lot of weight, so a lot of muscle mass and things like that. And it took him a long time to get anywhere near the football pitch, really. And since then, he's never recovered pace-wise. He's still got pace, but he's probably a yard slower than he was. And that was his biggest attribute with his pace, like you say, his physicality. He didn't, like you say, he hasn't really played many games at centre-half. He's played in the 3 quite often. So under Lampard, he played in the 3 sometimes. But he's played his best football at left back, and he came in a few weeks back for Mikalenko, who was ill, and he did okay. But then, what game was it where we struggled? Was it United game? He played left back, and they were just playing these passes all the time, just doing them every single time. And at our time, he got pulled, and then he then got concussed against Fulham. Off the top of my head again, thinking about that, and he struggled. I mean, Mikalenko's not great either. I mean, I'm not one for calling players out, but he's struggled. He struggles with the pace of the Premier League. Defensively, he's much better than going forward. Every time he goes forward, his first thought is go back. Whereas we've been used to Leighton Baines, Luca Dean, left backs who fantastic left foots, assists, goals, free kicks, set pieces, corners, all that.
What about Vinagre? Mike, is he? Because I know he came in.
He's injured. He's out for the season.
Oh, is he injured? Right. Okay.
But good question, because when he came in under Frank Lampard, he played a couple of League Cup games, and you thought, this kid's got a bit. He was obviously played Premier League football before with Wolves, He was young, I think, 23, maybe 24. And he was a much more attacking fullback. So probably didn't suit or doesn't suit Sean Dyche. But Lampard never fancied him either. It was a strange signing because when he came in, it was like out of nowhere, that signing. He wasn't linked. And one day, just till up a Finch Farm, everyone went, "Oh, yeah, we signed Vinagre on loan for the season." And but then Sean Dyche said, "Oh yeah," he always forgets about him in the press conference. And someone said, "What about Vinagre?" "Oh yeah, he's in. You won't see him again this season." I wouldn't have thought. And it's just like sort of like no one really cares for him. So we struggle. You know, we always go back, as I say, to Leighton Baines and Luca Dean as being, you know, well, Leighton Baines was the one set the bar. My hero at Everton. You know, absolutely loved the man, and no one will ever top him as a left back. But since he's gone, you know, Luca Dean took up the mantle pretty well. Got sold because Benitez didn't like him and he fell out. And then since then, you know, Michalenko, we overpaid for him. Came obviously at a difficult time as well, given what was happening or what happened in Ukraine when he came over. So yeah, from a fullback perspective, we struggle. You know, Seamus Coleman for me is massively important to our back four, and he shouldn't be. He should be long. You know, I'm not saying retired, but he should be on the bench just playing a bit part. But Nathan Patterson struggled with injury, and when he's come back in, looks shaky. Obviously, Holgate, absolutely, you know, possibly one of the thickest players I've ever known. When he got booked against Palace, we all said, take him off. Well, I don't know why he started anyway, but take him off at half time because he will get booked again. He's done it before. And what happens? He gets booked again. He just doesn't think. He hasn't got a brain when it comes to football. So from a full-back perspective, we struggle. And as I say, Seamus Coleman is touch and go for Thursday. It's probably more so, I'm thinking of him back in my mind now, we ain't going to see him. So I'm a little bit sceptical of who's going to start there. Because looking at the Arsenal game, Michalenko and Coleman were fantastic, by the way, because we doubled up. So with Iwobi and McNeil, the two of them dropped in. And like Saka, Martinelli didn't cause us a problem all game. And they're two very, very informed players who've been fantastic all season. So they can do a job. But, you know, I'm concerned if there's no Seamus Coleman, that's for sure.
Interesting.
Yeah. Michael Pomar with an interesting question. He says, how much have you missed for Richarlison this year? And are you surprised at his struggles at Spurs?
That's huge. If Richarlison's still at Everton, we're not where we are. We're not where we are. It's that simple because at times he dragged Everton through. You know, he's always good for, you know, sort of 8 to 10 goals a season. He loved the club. His mentality was absolutely spot on. I mean, people see him, you know, he's a bit of a sulky, never smiles. He leaves it all out there, Richarlison, and you know, I feel for him at Spurs. I really do. You know, he had to be sold. Let's get that, guys. He would have stayed. But Everton had to sell somebody by the end of that financial window, the end of June. So Richarlison was the chosen man. And obviously he struggled at Spurs. Only scored in the Champions League, hasn't he? He hasn't scored in the Premier League. Had injuries. And to him, you know, what means everything to him is playing for his country. And when that's in jeopardy, you know, it'll mean a lot to him, and he's probably struggling a little bit mentally. And I think if Everton said, you know, come back, he'd come back at an absolute heartbeat because it's just a good fit. But Spurs is never going to be a good fit, really, given the players that they've got. You know, they look, obviously you've got Harry Kane, you've got Son, Kulusevski, Lucas Moura is another one. Sessegnon can play up there. So you're always scraping around, and he always prefers to play centrally. So he'd love to play where Harry Kane plays, but he's not Harry Kane, and he doesn't do what Harry Kane does. He drops quite deep at times, Harry Kane, and orchestrates things from a little bit deeper. So I feel for him, I really do, and I wouldn't be surprised if Spurs moved him on. Depends what happens, obviously, from a manager perspective with them. But he'd do a job at Real Madrid, Richarlison, with Carlo Ancelotti. Believe me, he'd do a job. He's young enough. He just probably needs another fresh start and just to press the reset button. And I think, you know, going to Spain, somewhere like that, would do him the absolute world of good. But we miss him hugely. Absolutely. Our most important player last season was Richarlison. He was playing injured. You know, that game against Palace, he was playing with one leg, effectively. You know, he still grabbed the goal. You know, when you look at when we scored and he just collapsed on the floor, just fell and face planted the floor. He was just done in. But that's the attitude of the player. That shows you what he's all about. And, you know, whoever he signs for, if he does move on, he's an asset for me.
I'll be honest with you. I never saw it happening, but I'd have took Richarlison at Newcastle. I actually rated him. I thought he was. I thought he was very, very good, and him and Gordon were the two big reasons why you stayed in the league last season. I genuinely thought that. But when you're going into a Tottenham team that are playing like this, and the club is flat on its face, it's really, really difficult when you're a new player coming in. It doesn't matter how much you sign for. It doesn't matter who you are as a player. We saw in the World Cup, actually. I don't know if
Brilliant
Chris.
goal by Richarlison.
Yeah, agree that Richarlison played well in the World Cup for Brazil. When he came in, he did a good job, and you could see, and it was almost like all the Tottenham fans were going, "What? Like, how is that the same player?" But then the Everton fans going, "Actually, that's what we saw last season," kind of thing, in the way in which he performed. So it's clear that fit is probably not right. And it was interesting that Richarlison and Joe Linton were having a bit of a chat after the game, not necessarily from a Newcastle perspective, but like if you watch it back, it almost looks like he's like mouthing the words. Joe Linton says something to him, but you can't see his mouth because he's facing the other way, and he kind of like Richarlison is almost saying like, "We're just shit," and then it kind of moves, the camera moves on, and it's like, you can't argue with that.
10 and 10.
Performance. What was that? Sorry, Keith.
10 goals in 10 games for Brazil last year.
Yeah.
Richarlison. I just think it's just too toxic an atmosphere at Spurs. Really, they seem to be very destabilized, since if you think about where they were when Pochettino was there, and just when it started to go wrong on Pochettino, just hasn't seemed to have been stable or right for Spurs since, really.
No.
And you've got to feel sorry for players like that, that have been in form at clubs like Everton, and then they have the big move to Spurs and it goes wrong.
I mean, he must be looking at it, mustn't he? He come on as sub, didn't he, in our game, and he come on at 6-1, and you're like, what's he meant to do with that? What's he meant to do with that?
Yeah. He's literally getting his appearance bonus, but you know, Richarlison isn't built like that. He's not that type of player.
No,
he wants to come on and make a difference. He wants to come on and play well. He's talked about it quite openly at Tottenham, and fair play to it. But yeah, it'd be an interesting one to watch actually in the summer. Not for us, not for Newcastle, and probably not for Everton. But as Mike quite rightly said, if I was Richarlison and I'm looking at what's happening at Tottenham, I can't get a game when Kulusevski's playing, and he's been shocking. And Son, although the last couple of games has been decent, apart from Newcastle, he's had a shocking season. But yet, Richarlison can't get a game, a regular start in the team. He must be thinking, "Get me out of here." So, definitely an interesting one to watch. But sorry, Chris.
No, you're all right, mate. Michael Pomar asks, Mike, when are you expecting to hear about your FFP punishment? I heard they plan to do this before the end of the season, but it's all gone quiet on that front.
Yeah, it's not going to be. It won't be this season. Everton dragged things out as much as they could on that front, to be honest. In terms of they filed the accounts late, like right at the last minute. But as I say, from our perspective, by the way. And this is a known fact. We've been on the Premier League sort of regulations and extra sort of rules and regulations for the last 18 months. Everton couldn't buy a toilet roll without putting it through the Premier League first of all. So the Premier League are the ones on sale, by the way. I know obviously we're the ones, we're the name, we're the club, and if anyone's going to be punished, it's going to be Everton. That's what happens with us. Obviously, it's only one charge compared to Man City's 96 or 99, whatever it might be. But it's not the Premier League who decides either. It's an independent panel. People seem to think that there's been a few headlines around about how other clubs are pushing the Premier League to get Everton's punishment sorted before the season's over. Well, not to do with the Premier League. They've gone to this independent regulator. There's got to be a 3-day hearing where Everton lay it all out, and there's all the evidence, and this is what's happened and what have you. The Premier League signed off on everything last season, absolutely everything. So the ones who are in the dock, not only Everton, the Premier League and their rules, and we all know it's political because with what happened with obviously the about looking to regulate Premier League and what have you, the Premier League are trying to show that they can self-regulate and what we've got in place works. And look what's happened. Man City, or we've charged them. Everton, we've charged them. But I'm not fearful. I've got to be honest with you. I think it's all a bit of a show and dance just to keep certain people at bay. It won't happen this season. If you want to throw a points deduction in, it'll be in probably for the start of next season. But I think you're more likely to see a transfer ban, which is probably quite extreme, or a fine. But as I say, the Premier League are the ones who've made a cock up, because all the clubs went to them last season and said, "Hang on, what's happening with Everton?" They went, "It's okay. We've signed off on everything." The COVID expenses were an absolute joke. They were about what were we about? I think Villa was second with about 40-50 million. Everton had 130 million pound worth of COVID expenses in the Premier League. Went, okay, yeah, nice one, lads. No problem at all. Now we all know what goes on. I'm not defending Everton's position, but the league want to go, that's fine. That's your fault, not ours. It's clever accounting. Yeah. That's for sure. But
that's what I was going to say, Mike. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
But that's what I was going to say, is that that's what I was going to come to, because I genuinely, and to be fair, me and Chris talked about this probably this time last year with regards to Everton, when all that conversation was coming about with the finances of Everton. And it was very, very clear with their accounts that something wasn't right when they were putting all the COVID stuff down, and it was significantly higher than any other Premier League club. Like I said, yours was like 130 million. The next one was like Villa at 50. Everyone else, including the big teams who could have probably put bigger finances and get away with it, had significantly lower COVID kind of like deficiencies. And it was like, something's not right here. The fact that the Premier League have acknowledged it, and then all of a sudden it just kind of drifted away and nothing was happened, and then signed off very, very like quickly and quietly. And that's what I wanted to ask you. So because it's gone to an independent kind of decision and an independent panel, are you more worried about that? The fact that the independent panel could well like put the hammer down and say, actually, and to be fair, you've made the point to the Premier League as well, and say, actually, this is not right, this is wrong, and actually go, something needs to be done about this because this is way off. And not only the Premier League get held to account, but Everton, and it potentially, you've mentioned maybe a points deduction next season, maybe a fine, transfer ban, maybe it could be a little bit of all three, or maybe more significant because of the fact that it should have been issued last season and it wasn't. I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I mean, they couldn't have issued it last season because of the fact that we didn't have to file the accounts until obviously this year. So it was the end of March, wasn't it? We had to file the accounts for 21-22. So Leeds and Burnley kicking off was neither here nor there. The only moment, because obviously where they were in the league table, Leeds went away when they were safe. So the only club we were moaning with was Burnley at the time. You're always at the back of your mind, you're always concerned because we're in uncharted territory, aren't we? The first time it's ever happened. So Man City's is different in the fact that they're basically just making the books look better by having all the different associated sponsors coming in and giving them loads of money, sponsoring the toilet rolls, the players' toothbrushes, the wash bags and all that kind of nonsense. That's what City are doing. Everton's different in terms of they're saying that we've gone above the profits and sustainability rules and regulations by so many million. I think obviously we made a loss of 45 million for the 22-23, but looking over the last 3 years, we're quite a bit above. But you're always a little bit concerned in that sense. But I just all the noises don't seem to point to anything too hefty. But you just never know. I think it's laughable when you've got certain clubs doing whatever they want, and Chelsea spending what they just spent. By the way, since the new owner came in, it's absolutely farcical what they've been allowed to spend, and we're getting pulled. Our owner wants to put his own money in, but because of regulations, he can't. It's the only business in the world that you can't put your own money into the club. You've got to do it within rules and regulations. When he wants to put in whatever he wants to go and buy players and what have you, but he's not allowed to. But then this, obviously, Todd Bowley as the most extreme example, is just flashing cash about and doing whatever he wants, and signing 30 odd players over the course of 2 windows. and we're the ones who are being pulled in front of an independent panel. It's laughable, but it was brought in. This profit and sustainability rules and regulations was brought in to keep the status quo. It's always been that way. They wanted to keep the same sort of 4, 5, 6 teams where they are because they sell the Premier League product better. On a global aspect, it looks a lot better when it's Man City, Arsenal, Man U, Liverpool, Tottenham and Chelsea as your top 6 because they're effectively the ones who bring in the biggest audiences. So it's all a farce anyway. So maybe it might take something like this for things to change. But as I say, what happens with Everton more often than not is we're made an example of, and we're the ones who lose out. But I said this at the time. Where's all the calls from the journalists when the Super League came out and it was all, you can't punish the fans. You can't give them point deductions. You can't. Where's all the calls for that now? They're not there, are they? Because we're not one of those 6 sides. So it's all laughable anyway. It just absolutely cracks me up. But what chance do you have? I mean, obviously you're showing yourselves what can be done with smart investments, not just splashing the cash on anybody just to say, "Oh, I've got money. I'll go and give you £50 million for some bang average player." What Newcastle have done, and I've said it, I've been on the show a couple of times, is you bought what you had to buy last season to keep you in the Premier League. It was smart. They're all smart moves. Some of them are still what you want now. You most definitely want to be in the start 11. Others are being moved on. Chris Wood, as an example, brought in to do a job, then shipped out. Whereas now, in the last window, if you like, the last summer window, you then bought better quality of players again to improve you as a side, and that's what should be done. But will it get to the point where they think, well, hang on, Newcastle are going to ruffle a few feathers. They're going to get into this top 6 on a regular basis. What can we do about that? So I just think it's so corrupt. You see, it drives me nuts. And the days of with the old First Division when anyone could win the league from sort of 8 to 10 teams each season, when it was more competitive, and that was better. All this now where so many clubs are just getting protected makes you laugh. But you'll probably find out yourselves what goes on with the Premier League cartel. You know exactly what they're like.
We had a year and a half of it, didn't we?
Yeah, but it'll come back. It'll come back because it's already started to, hasn't it? It's already started to come back again. And I don't get involved. The politics of your move and what have you. I don't know enough about Saudi Arabia. I don't, and I can't sit here and say I know anything about it. So I don't talk about it because I don't. That's up to me to probably educate myself if I want to have a discussion about that. But the point is, they won't like the fact that Newcastle this season are going to get Champions League football. They will not like that. It doesn't look good for the Premier League. They want their same 6 sides. So what can they do to upset the Newcastle apple cart? And whether people like to take over or not, that's beside the point. You as fans shouldn't be the ones to suffer for it, by the way. And it's always the same, isn't it? But the Premier League and certain 6 teams will look to do, what can we do now to move you on? Because you're getting in the way now of what we want to do. We want to be in the Champions League. We want to be in the Europa League and winning these trophies. Not Newcastle. Not Brighton are pushing obviously sides like that. So it'll come back again to yourselves. I'm sure it will.
I'll just add to that. I actually don't think the Premier League. Some people may not agree with this. I actually don't think the Premier League now have an issue with Newcastle getting Champions League football. I actually think they believe it's good for football that a different team is representing the Premier League in the European competitions. But as someone just put in the chat, Craig Lee, in fact, he's put Daniel Levy and Masters hand in hand at St James's Park. For me, I think not necessarily that point, but I think the people that don't want Newcastle in the Champions League are the owners or the people that are in the big positions at these other clubs. They don't want Newcastle in these positions. Why? Because it affects their own club. You look at what Newcastle have done this season, and we've effectively not guaranteed, because we're in a position now where we could guarantee it, but we have effectively taken the place of Tottenham. Tottenham could have had an absolutely piss-poor season. If Newcastle weren't where we were, Tottenham would be sitting 4th right now. And after a piss poor season, would be considered Champions League quality off the back of this season. And this is the thing: the Premier League want a different team to represent. They promote the fact that it's the biggest, most competitive league in the Premier League, and I think since Newcastle's takeover, I think they've had to massage some egos a little bit with some of the big owners of the Big Six to make them feel special. But equally, I think they're actually embracing the fact that a Newcastle, a Brighton, and Aston Villa are part of that conversation now, because it promotes something different within the Premier League. And from my perspective, I think it's the owners of the other clubs or the people that work in those high positions, like Daniel Levy, that are trying to stop this. But
the ESL proves that, doesn't it, Pete?
Yeah,
trying to create the European Super League. That kind of proves it, doesn't it? Because obviously, the likes of Levy and all the other owners, they all were having meetings trying to get it all together, and obviously it backfired, didn't it? And a few of them pulled out. And
you know what, Chris? You're absolutely right, and I think that actually went in our favour with the Premier League, because actually, from my perspective only, I actually think when that situation took place and that happened, they're looking at it and thinking, well, hold on, we've been protecting you and looking after you for God knows how many years, and then you wanted to jump ship. You wanted to go and do that to get more money. If that's what you want to do, forget you. We'll go and support the other ones. And I actually think it would probably put us in favour a little bit. But I think we're at the point now where we're no different to what Tottenham had when they first broke into the top four, and what Man City had when they first broke into the top four. They were a team that were non-fashionable at that particular time. But because they backed it up with more Champions League and more top four finishes, it became the norm.
Newcastle top six.
Yeah, Newcastle potentially, fingers crossed, could do that this season. But if we go and do it next season, it will then become the norm. And actually, all the talk around Newcastle will start to disappear. That's what you'll find. We just need to do it once and then try and back it up again. And once we do that, I think people's opinions, particularly in those high positions, will start to change about Newcastle from that perspective. But that's just my little 2 pence on that.
Top six becomes top 8. Throw Villa in it as well.
Yeah. We throw Brighton in that conversation if they can back it up with another good season. It throws that question out there, that's for sure. Definitely. But Villa have got the finances to back it up too.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah? So they're not out. They're not out.
Manager. They've got a manager now as well.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. Fire a couple of questions on before we get predictions.
Yeah, what I'll do, I'll just quickly, I've got 3 here, which are all very similar, Mike, so I'll kind of ask these together. So with the financial questions being fired at Everton lately and the money spent on the new stadium, would relegation be a complete disaster for Everton? And then we had, we've been, excuse me, we've been there where every season is a relegation fight. Obviously, Michael saying what we were talking about pre-show, lads, saying that, like not so long ago we were in the same position as Everton find themselves in now. In a sense, would it be a bit of a relief if you went down next season and you can look forward to winning a lot more? I must admit, Mike, we were devastated to go down to the FL, but it was quite nice every week going in as like the Man City of the league, where everyone wanted to beat us, and a lot of clubs were like in awe of us whenever we played. Big, massive stadium, and we were on top for the majority of games. We had the lion's share of possession. Kind of got the confidence back a little bit. And then also to add into that, Tom Dixon says, with 6 games remaining for Everton, to link into the other 2 questions, do you think you can stop up in the Premier League? And what do you think of Sean Dyche as manager as a little extra? Are you happy with Sean Dyche going forward? Do you think he's someone who has been brought in where, if worst case scenario you do go down, he's probably the perfect man to bring you back up? Or do you think you might cut ties with Sean Dyche and just go afresh?
I mean, answering that question first, whatever happens, Sean Dyche will stay on. Like you say, if we went down, he'd probably be the ideal man to hopefully bring us straight back up. In terms of his longer term, if he keeps us up, he definitely deserves to keep his job, because he came in a terrible position. So that alone would certainly mean that he should stay on. So yeah, I don't expect a change in manager regardless, to be honest with you. But relegation would be disastrous for Everton from a financial perspective. The stadium would probably still get done. There's still a lot of talk around investments again today. It's imminent. You know, with this 25% coming in terms of buying potentially 25% of Farhad Moshiri's shares, which then effectively gives the money then to finish off the stadium. The stadium will get done. Make no mistake about that. I mean, you know, it's not far from you, Chris. You can probably see it from the front window now. It's absolutely massive. I'm down there. I'm down there quite regularly, so I will be operating boat trips on match day as and when Bramley-Moore opens from over the water. Get on the Al speedboat, James Bond style to Bramley-Moore. No, listen, that's exciting. That's the one thing that you can look at and go, you know, we can look forward to that. It's a fantastic place, right on the water there. You know, it doesn't get much better. The design is fantastic. It's going to be tight in terms of a tight ground. It's going to mimic Goodison in that sense. So from a noise and acoustic, you know, perspective, it's going to be fantastic. So we can't wait. You know, we can't wait for that. But if we go down, it will be a disaster because I think straight away, I think we'd most definitely breach the EFL financial rules for this year. So obviously we're going to have to put our accounts in by a certain date. But Everton, I think from what I read, if we go down, we've got to come straight back up. If we stay down there for more than a season, then we're absolutely snookered in more ways than one. So it's certainly not a prospect that I look forward to with any kind of envy. It's something which you've got to avoid. It's that simple, you know, and it could be, as I said, if we got relegated, it could be a nail in the coffin for Everton Football Club, you know. And people say, oh, you know, dramatic. No. Administration will not be far away, but believe me, it will not be far away.
Really?
Yeah, it'll be close. Yeah, it'll be close.
Wow.
Because we're in such a poor financial position. You know, bear in mind, we were getting bankrolled by Usmanov. Everyone knows this. Everyone, and I remember at the time people were denying it. It's just nonsense. Yeah, so as soon as he was sanctioned, the cash flow and the money tapped to Farhad Moshiri stopped. Yes, he's got his own money. Yes, he's a billionaire in his own right, but he's a billionaire because of Usmanov. He basically gave him shares and made him a billionaire.
Usmanov, as soon as he came in, you guys went close to $500 million in terms of what you spent over those years. So yeah, and like you said, it stopped very, very quickly once. We have
to pull, you know, the partnership with USM, you know, USM, Megaphone, they're all companies associated with Alicia Usmanov, and obviously he sponsored Finch Farm. That went. He had first refusal on naming rights for the stadium. He paid £30 million. You know, that £30 million. What would our accounts look like? Because that was paid off as a one-off lump sum. Now that was just for first refusal. That wasn't to guarantee him naming rights. That's just to say, yeah, we can ask you first. So £30 million for that. And then we had to then take away all the USM sponsorship went, which was worth about £25 million a season. The sponsorship towards a women's team, that was, they had Megaphone on their shirt, and one of the sleeve sponsors, I think, was to do with Usmanov. So all that's just stopped, just click of a finger, it was gone. So we were in a poor situation. Obviously, we sold Richarlison the back end of the last financial window, if you like, end of June. We've made big money on Anthony Gordon in the January transfer window and didn't spend a penny. So we will look better next season if we stay up, obviously. But if we go down, it'll be a sad state of affairs, that's for sure. So something that we don't really want to think about, and that's why obviously picking up wins and points is so important over the next 6 games.
Definitely. What have you got for us, Chris? Any more questions? There's a good one from Gary Milliken.
Oh, is one for
just for his
oh yeah, go for it. So yeah, Gary Milliken asks, question for you, loads of lads, and obviously, you know, we can ask Mike this as well. When you were playing football at school, which player were you?
Chris would have been Duncan Ferguson, by the way. Get that one in there. At Everton, Newcastle.
Big Dunk. I was going to say, surely you went to school when Big Dunk was at Newcastle. Surely. Or what? Oh no,
Yeah, I was.
yeah,
Yeah, I was.
Second
Year
was
9, year 10. Yeah.
second was
Yeah,
good.
yeah. And I remember when he signed for 8 million, it was weird because, like, I used to look at Ferguson as an Everton player and be like, oh, I never even associated with him joining us. And then he did, and it was a bit like, oh. And then obviously we all remember that fantastic goal that he scored against Man U. We all adored him then. And then he quickly left again, didn't he? For I think we signed him for 8 million, and then he left and went back to Everton for 4 million. But it was short and sweet. But yeah, I liked the Big Dunk.
For me, it was a mixture between Andy Cole and Alan Shearer. I'm telling a lie here. A mixture between the three: Andy Cole, Les Ferdinand, Alan Shearer. They were I was a striker growing up, so like looking at the way that Andy Cole used to score his goals, then watching Les Ferdinand be big and physical. Win headers in the air, and then looking at Alan Shearer and just his hold up play, runs in and behind. I just used to watch the three of them and just be in awe because they each brought something individually quality to the team when watching Newcastle. So yeah, they were the three guys for me. That's for sure. I always used to do the Alan Shearer celebration. It was always the arm aloft when the ball was in the net. What about you, Keith?
Yeah, it would be similar sort of lines. I mean, in my head, obviously, it was Shearer and like Gaza because of Euro 96. And Gaza was playing really well with Rangers at the time. But obviously, I couldn't play anything like them, could I? But that's who I was, when you're playing and sort of like on a Saturday afternoon and it was sort of like even practice football with your mates and stuff. It was all of that stuff going on because that was effectively it was the soundtrack, wasn't it? Because you'd go back home and grandstand would be on and then the results would come in and those were the guys who were playing and you'd look for the Newcastle results and then you look for SPL as well to see how Gaza was doing it at Rangers.
Definitely. Mike, did you already say? What did you say?
No, I didn't.
You said Duncan Ferguson for Chris, didn't you?
Yeah, I answered for Chris. Before you could get in there and lie about it. So yeah, I think thinking back, see, I used to fluctuate between being in goal because I'm tall and so that was I played in goal, but I also played up front at times as well, and then gradually worked my way back to sort of like left wing because of left footed, then centre half, then left back, and then in goal. So went backwards and backwards, through the team. But Neville Southall was always one. Big Ned was coming to sort of the back end. I was born '84, so he was still around when I was in infants and junior school. But then around that FA Cup winning side as well, obviously Big Dunk would have been one, and Amakachi was one. He was a character. Obviously came from the Nigerian centre forward after obviously the World Cup '94 and in America, and what a talisman he was. Got subbed himself on in the semi-final against Spurs at Ellen Road, didn't he? And scored 2 and took us to Wembley. So another player that on the schoolyard you'd be shouting his name as you were scoring goals between a couple of jumpers as well. So yeah, there's a couple there, but
Fanny Jeffers.
No, he was a little bit thinking about when obviously Jeffers sort of early.
It was only a short period, wasn't it? Before he moved
and Jeffers was one of them. I never really took to Franny Jeffers, to be honest with you. I don't know what it was. And I remember seeing him in town once in a Volkswagen Golf with his windows down, and that just did it for me. I've got no time for you.
What about Bakayoko, Mike?
I was a waste of time, wasn't he? He was great on Chat Manager though.
Oh, yeah, he was.
Yeah, what a sign!
Manager,
Chat Man, he was good.
Which one? It's got to be 0102.
0102 is my favourite. I don't think he was on that one though, was he?
98.
Vardy equaliser.
Yeah, 1-1. Just seeing it. Yeah, good for us. Good for us. But no, yeah, I think Bakayoko was on there. I think 98. He was the one when he was really good. I remember he wanted to take a penalty for Everton in a shootout with his coat on. Bakayoko. So he was another strange character, but we've had a few over the years. But no, Big Ned was a hero. What a goalkeeper, best in the world by a country mile. And then as I got older, Leighton Baines, absolutely loved the fella. Still now, he still works at the club now, under 18 coach, fantastic fella.
And we love Big Nev. Well, I'm talking for everyone here, but I particularly love Big Nev because I love that video of when Michael Owens taking shooting practice against that young kid, and Nev's just taking the piss out of him.
Did you see Big Nev? He got a photo with the fella as he is now. So obviously, I'll try and find it. I'll send it over to you. So he met up with the fella. He was out doing some kind of appearance, and the lad was there. And I think he had the orange goalie shirt on. He's about 35 now, and he looks exactly the same, just like a little bit chunkier. You know, obviously Big Nev's obviously a lot chunkier than he was. But this fella was brilliant. Yeah, what a video, Michael Owen, what a clown. I was like, well done. He's 13 or something. He said, didn't he?
Yeah.
Just for everyone in the chat, someone put in the chat earlier about Madison not doing a very good free kick, and kind of putting it my way. He's just got an assist. That's all I'll say. That's all I'll say. If the deal's right and he doesn't want to be a clown and go down south to that shower shite in Spurs, we'll take him. Because he puts things on a plate for players. He's got the assists, he's got the goals, he is a quality player. The only thing you need to do is acclimatise to our system and the way we play. But yeah, just wanted to throw that in there. But yeah.
Also, Pete, we've got to say a big thank you to Roy Morton. Roy, thank you very much, mate. Thank you very much for the super sticker. Roy, next time you do one, mate, throw something in the comments or a question or whatever it is, mate. But thank you very, very much.
Definitely. Top stuff. Anything else before we go to predictions?
No, I don't think so. Just a massive thank you to everyone for all the questions. We've had our money's worth out of Mike tonight, haven't we? We've asked some tough questions there.
We did. Brilliant show as always. Thank you for all your questions in the chat. We love them as always, and always contributes to the show absolutely perfectly. And look, let's get to predictions. So on Thursday evening, Chris, you're going to be at the game. You're going to be at Goodison Park. From a Newcastle perspective, what do you think the score is going to be?
I think I'm going to have to say, Mike's not going to like this, I think I'm going to have to say 3-0 Newcastle.
Oh, it's going big.
I think so. I know Mike said he doesn't see goals, but I just that performance, that performance at the weekend just blew me away. And I fully expect us to come out the traps. And I think it, like I said earlier, if we get a goal in that first 15, 20 minutes, I think we could back it up with another two, possibly 3 more.
Going big. Wow. Okay. Look, Mike, we'll come to you for the opposition's perspective. I think you touched on one or two things earlier, but what do you think the result is going to be from an Everton point of view?
A comfortable 6-0, I'd say. 3 for James Tarkowski. No, listen. If we get 3 shots on target, we'll be doing well. No, I say it's going to be tight. I think when we did our podcast at the weekend, obviously we previewed the game, and I just think that if we can set up like we did against Arsenal, like we did against Palace, in terms of just being difficult, but with the impact of Goodison Park, and it people I think laugh at these things, but with St James's Park, what it could be like, when the fans are up for it, floodlights are on, night games, they do hit that little bit differently, and we can make all the difference. And as I say, as much as it's not about Anthony Gordon, it's a factor, and it's a factor that plays into Everton's hands. And it's how Eddie Howe wants to play it, really, and whether Anthony Gordon cries off. But I think it's going to be tight. I can't see us not stopping yourselves scoring, but I think we can nick it 2-1, and that's me being ultra positive. I'd probably take a point. Someone asked before, would I take a point? I would. I'm not saying definitely want a point. I want to win the game. It wouldn't be the end of the world. As things stand at the moment, it wouldn't get us out of the bottom 3. Obviously, with the Leicester Leeds game being 1-1, but
just had a goal ruled out as well.
I just saw it then. But yeah, I'm going to say Everton 2-1, ultra positive. Dominic Calvert-Lewin back on the score sheet, and Alex Iwobi with an assist from Louis. Louis, they just stop oil fella back on 86 minutes. little assist there.
Hey, if that happens, I'm coming for you, Mike, because something's not right there. So it's not right. 2 years on the bounce. And of course, look, for me, I'm going to go 2-0 Newcastle. I'm going to go. It's about time we got a clean sheet. I was gutted really that we didn't get one against Tottenham because I think we deserved it, but we didn't. I think we need to get a clean sheet. I think it's about time, and I think we'll get the goals that win the game. So I'm going to go for a 2-0 win. That's my prediction for this game. And of course, we come to the main man, 00 Stato, our resident Splinter in the house. Dr. Doom, as some people know him as, and more recently we know him as Jaws, one of the other Bond villains in there. What have you got for us this week in terms of a prediction, Keith? What are you thinking?
Well, I think the game could follow a similar pattern to last time Newcastle were at Goodison. You know, the circumstances are quite similar as well, apart from Newcastle at the top end of the table. Everton, again, were in a similar position last year. They were in that bottom 3, bottom 4. And again, they had the change of manager. And again, they picked up some points in that run as well. They've done that this season as well. You know, they took a point off City. They took points off City. You know, they beat Arsenal not too long ago. They had a brilliant result against Leeds, a good point away to Nottingham Forest, a win against Brentford, points off Chelsea away.
Keith, this is worrying me here, mate. You are worrying me here.
What's going on?
And a good result. Remember, Spurs were on Spurs.
After those stats before when you were carrying it in, weren't you? So now you thought, oh, hang on, I'll have to rewind a little bit and throw some positive stats in there. I know your game, Keith. Don't you worry about that.
Spurs, good point off Spurs as well with that Keane goal as well. I think this could be a draw.
That was a great goal, that, by the way. Our Callum went berserk when Keane hit that. Couldn't believe it.
Michael Palmer in the chat didn't want us to go for a win. I know what he thinks as well, that if I'm predicted, because somebody pointed out in the chat, every time I went for a win this season, Newcastle haven't won. So I'm going to go and I'm going to say it's going to be a 1-1 on Thursday night.
1-1.
It helps Newcastle. It helps Newcastle. It helps Everton, doesn't it?
Would you
with a brilliant goal?
Would you take 1-1 in the fact that we've spoken, haven't we? And we've said, you know, could potentially be a banana skin. It wouldn't be the worst result in the world. If we go to Southampton and we go and win at Southampton, that's 7 points out the 9. We're still well on course for where we need to be. I know Everton. Well, I think Mike was saying before. You know, you'd be happy with a point. Would you take a point, or do you want all 3? As in, you know, that's your minimum. That's what you're after.
You asking me?
Yeah.
I want 3 points.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. This is not overconfidence. We need 3 points. I want us to get to Champions League football as quick as possible, as soon as possible.
Yeah, to just get it done.
And we only get there through wins. And look, we've talked about it in the show. We've got Everton on Thursday. We've got Southampton on Sunday. Okay, we've got Arsenal after that, but then we have Leeds and then we have Leicester. They're all in the bottom half of the table. With the season that we've had, we should be expecting to pick up points, maximum points in a number of those games. Now, Goodison is not an easy place to go to. Someone in the chat have mentioned it already. It's not an easy place to go. We've not had a great record there. Keith with his stats early on, absolutely spot on, emphasised the point. It hasn't been a great hunting ground for points in years gone by. But this is a different Newcastle United, and we're on the verge of getting Champions League football. And when you're on the verge of getting Champions League football, you need to go to teams and pick up points. It's as simple as that. This is no different to what we will be talking about in a few weeks' time when we go to Leeds. I'll be expecting exactly the same. I'll be expecting us to go to those places that are down there fighting for their lives, fair play. But I would be expecting us in the position that we are to go and take points because we need points on the board, 3 points on the board in order to guarantee Champions League football. That's where I'm at. So that's why I'm saying what I'm saying. But I get what Mike's saying, because they're fighting for their lives and they need the points and they're going to create a massive atmosphere. But we've got players in this team now that we didn't have last season in the likes of Sven Botman that's coming in that allows that level of calm. One or two other players that will come in and create a different mindset. Kieran Trippier, for example, we missed him in this game. He's the captain. He's the one that keeps things calm, his deliveries, everything about him. So we've got other players that are going to come in that will give us a little bit something different in this game. And I think that could potentially make the difference. So that's what I'm hoping on. That's what I'm banking on. And that's why I wouldn't necessarily take a point. If we got a point, I'll be honest with you, I'd be a little bit disappointed, because I think in the position that Everton are in, after losing to Fulham the weekend before, and then drawing to Palace, it's not like Everton are on a great run of form. They're not. But we know that they've got a capability of turning up and putting a good performance in and raising the standards when they need to. We saw it last season. But I just think, and this goes back to my point, I just hope and think and believe that Eddie Howe will have Newcastle United ready to kind of get past that, because we didn't pass that test last season. I expect us to pass that test this season and have the team ready. Eddie, Mike Tyndall, Tyndall, and
Jason Tyndall.
Jason Tyndall, and all the other boys in the background. I expect them. Matt Ritchie, for example, Jamal Lascelles, if he doesn't play, I expect those guys to get the players ready for this game. That's what I fully expect. So that's where I'm at. That's me.
I to be honest, mate, I get that. I think I don't know. I'm maybe looking at it from a more cautious perspective. I mean, obviously, like if we lost, I would be absolutely distraught, because that's happened far too many times when I've gone to Goodison. But I just think, me personally, I think if we come away with a draw, it's another game unbeaten and it's another point. Should we win? And will we be favourites to win? Yeah. And if we do win, obviously it'll be great, because like I say, I haven't been to Goodison Park too many times and won. But I still think a point would be decent, because I think we pick up the points that we need elsewhere. I think like Southampton is a given for me at the weekend. I think I'll actually go into the Arsenal at home game more confident than I am going into Thursday, because I think at St James's, I think we give Arsenal a game, and I think we can turn them over. But yeah, I mean, we should win, Pete. You're right, we should.
But let's see. It's all about a game of opinions. I have to say, massive thanks to Mike. Thank you so much for coming on. You know what? It's always a pleasure chatting to you and getting the Everton perspective from yourself. Brilliant channel. Just plug where we can find you, where all the Newcastle fans can find your channel.
So Spotify, obviously iTunes, all your podcast platforms, mainly audio. Do a little bit of video, but we've all got faces for radio, so we mainly stay off the cameras, to be perfectly honest, unless I've had my haircut, which I have yesterday. So it's we're all feeling fresh for Thursday. You see, got to look our best for Thursday, and obviously hopefully seeing Chris along the way. I know he's meeting Richie at some point on Thursday, so you might see him there before the game. But yeah, all your major podcast platforms. If you want to give us a listen, by all means, feel free. But always enjoy coming on. The only away fan media that I will come on every single season, by the way, and I enjoy doing so. I'll always set time aside. You know that I do enjoy it.
I appreciate that, and it's a pleasure to have you. And look forward to potentially having you on again as results go your way and potentially stay in the league. So fingers crossed from that perspective. Keith, Double O Stato, you fantastic stats as always. Always love the stats from away days point of view. don't always make the people in the chat happy with your predictions, but we respect your predictions and the reasons why you give those predictions as well, because you always back that up with the reasons why, and that's absolutely spot on. And of course, our partner in crime, the old Brandy and Blaze. We didn't say that earlier on. Brandy and Blaze back in business.
Yeah, we didn't. Did we? No, we didn't.
Great to have you on, as always, Chris. Absolute pleasure. As always, and look, we have to say a huge thank you to everyone in the chat. You guys have been outstanding as always. Some of the questions in there, Tom Dixon, Michael Palmer, and beyond, some super questions in there that have been really good talking points. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to our mod Lisa in the chat. Thank you for all your support as always, and everyone else with their questions and comments in the chat as always. The likes of Alan, Ian, I can see making comments, David R, Tom Dixon, and so many others. Thank you so much for all your support with Away Days and Loaded Mag and UFC. Click the like on the way out. If you're not part of the subscription channel, click subscribe. Like I said, we've had the best part of 40 subscribers in the last few days, so it's been amazing to have all that support for the channel. So click subscribe on the way out if you haven't already. Click those likes, and as well, as we said, click the notification button if you haven't already. Click that, because any of the other shows that we've got, and we've got some more shows coming up this week and going into next week, you'll be able to be notified in advance of those shows happening. So make sure that happens as well. And look, we are in the position where we're going to say goodbye. So thank you all to Mike, Keith, Chris, as always, everyone in the chat. You know what? Of course, we do love playing away. Guys, how do you like that?
How drink it.